A rendering of the sidewalk, the schematic. There, or yeah, either one of those, whichever one you prefer. Okay. So it's, how many tables?
So we have about, we have like maybe 6, 7 tables that would be out there.
Normally 5 shop.
Yeah.
Can we see the pictures as well, just to see?
Photographs?
We said photograph?
Oops.
So it would have that overhang as well? That's
Pardon?
part of, the overhang would be part of the proposal as well?
Yes.
Have there been outdoor seating before? Is that the purpose of the overhang?
Pardon?
Have there
Like
been,
sometimes it rains and like if the Uber guys come in, like they would, like if it rains and stuff, we need them to like maybe not come inside where they like crowd up like the inside space. So if it rains and like bad weather, whatever, we would use that as to,
oh, so it's temporary.
yeah.
It can be installed immediately.
Chantal, are these AI renderings or is this the current condition?
I'm sorry?
Is this an actual photo or is
Yeah,
it like
yes.
AI rendering or
Yes,
something?
this is the actual
So
photo.
this is the current condition with that
Yes.
overhang going? Okay.
Yes,
And the overhang is the area that was enclosed previously
yes.
with C.
Are you asking for any relief, or is it compliant with all of the sidewalk requirements that you're providing clear passage and you're not
Yes.
asking for more than what is permitted? Is that
No,
correct?
no, we're not asking for more, just what's permitted.
Yes.
I have a question. How did you determine how many tables you were gonna request?
I'm sorry?
How did you, I think you're asking for 7 outdoor tables?
Yeah, we could do 5 to 7, it just depends. The tables we have, the tables that we do have, they have different sizes, so it just depends on maybe the parties that comes up or, you know. So,
Okay, I'm gonna say this up front. The drawing is not as clear as most drawings that it's what I'm trying to say is it's easier to review if it's a more better drawing.
Not to scale.
Yeah,
The 12-foot space is like the same size as the 4-foot space.
I guess so, yeah. Could we go back to the schematic? Okay, so
Oh, it's 10 feet, okay, excuse me.
12,
12 and 10, 12 and 10.
I'm just taking a little time to make sure I understand it.
Plus 5. It's really 15 to the curve.
Chantal, could you clarify on this schematic, how far does like the palm trees that we see in the photo? Are we having to walk under the overhang to just walk by?
no, you don't know, because the sidewalk is pretty, it's like half.
The overhang goes to here, correct?
Yeah.
Got it.
That's correct.
Yes, yes,
And then the sidewalk
Yeah.
clearing from the overhang to the curb is 15 feet,
yeah.
which is more than 15% of the building line to the street, which is what you're required to have.
Thank you, Sean, okay.
Got it.
I thought we were just had that 5 feet to not be under the overhang. That'd be a bit.
That would be.
Yeah.
Pedestrians probably like it this way. There are no regs concerning how many tables or how much seating you can have in a certain square footage,
It
right?
just has to be 50% of the sidewalk available to pedestrians.
Yeah, but my point is, a
Uh-huh.
restaurateur
And they-
could pack as many tables as they
Yeah,
want. in that
if that's
area.
what they want their customer experience to be,
No, okay, I just remember that there are no regs, so it doesn't matter if you're putting 5, 6, or 7 out there regardless.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
okay.
You see, it's not to scale. You see the 12 feet from the front of the building to the approximately halfway point of the sidewalk. But the frontage is 25, which is, obviously like 2 times 12.
It's not drawn to scale.
Yes, not quite, and
That's good. Another question. How long has the restaurant been in business?
3 years.
Oh, there's a previous location.
Or an additional, you have more than one.
There's multiple,
overnight.
Yeah, they have one for like,
yeah,
Oh, okay, so, okay.
yeah.
Any complaints on this location?
No.
Record then, thank you.
That's actually, that helps me a lot because this is the second. Is this newer? There's like 2 IOs, this is what I'm learning, right?
Mhm.
And, okay, is this the new IOT as opposed to the first one?
This is the Cortellia Road location. There's only one in this district.
Very good,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
That's
there's only
the
one.
same one.
Yeah.
One I know.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Do
Recommendation.
board members have any more questions? Right. Do we have a recommendation to express an opinion to Department of Transportation based on this hearing?
Recommendation to approve. Second.
So the motion that was put forth by the board was to recommend approval of the new sidewalk cafe to the sidewalk cafe application under DOT's Dining Out NYC program at 1616 Cortellia Road from the applicant on Saida Incorporation doing business as Aya, and it was properly seconded. Do we have any questions or discussions on the motion?
One quick question, perhaps the 4 pillars of the overhang could be added to the schematic to just make it clear for everyone of what we approved. Because we're all under the impression that we approved what Sean showed us, and I believe you, but
We will note that in the narrative to DOT.
thanks.
So with that, are there any members abstaining? Are there any members ineligible? By a show of hands, are there any members opposed? Motion carried. So, it is now 6:45 PM and this public hearing is closed. The recommendation will be sent over to the Department of Transportation. So you could feel free to stay, but, no more deliberations, so you're okay.
all right.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's right. You can do it one. You can do it one.
This is the first time?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to stay.
Yes, I'll stay. I'll stay a little bit.
So we are gonna jump right into our another public hearing. So it is the public hearing is called to order on July 16th, 2026 at 6:46 PM at the Community Board 14 District Office, 810 East 16th Street, Brooklyn, New York. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony with respect to the application to renew a liquor, wine, beer, and cider license requested from the New York State Liquor Authority. The applicant is Team Soca Bar and Lounge LLC, doing business as Pitch Restaurant and Lounge, located at 774 Flatbush Avenue. The applicant is represented here today by Godfrey Lewis.
Yeah.
The Community Board 14 office received notification on June 23rd, 2026, and the State Liquor Authority allows 30 days should board wish to express an opinion to the authority. If members of the public wish to testify on the issue, you must register for time, signing up on the back table. Please state clearly for your record your name, whether you are a Community District 14 resident or the organization that you represent if applicable. So the first speaker will be Godfrey Lewis, owner of Pitch.
Hello, everyone. My name is Godfrey. I'm the owner of Pitch Restaurant. Opened 4 years ago. I live in the neighborhood for over 40 years. And I've been having some complaints regarding my liquor license, and I'm also up for renewal. And this is what I was brought here for.
Would you like to tell us just more about your time at Pitch since opening, how's business been?
Oh, sure.
The nature of some of their complaints?
No, sure. I've been open for 4 years. We are a family-run, community-based restaurant. We have no issues, no violent issues. It's a family-based restaurant. What else can I add to this? Yeah, the only issue we've been having complaints about noise. I've been working with the community affairs officer. Also, you guys, the committee board sent emails to you guys with my concern regarding the complaints that the neighbors have. I do have concern about that. I've taken a number of measures to actually bring down the noise in the back. And I just want to have some open discussions with the community regarding that.
Do you also want to talk, you had mentioned in the email to me about some of the community support efforts that you are involved in?
Yes, we actually
have that opportunity.
Yes, we do have a number of community events such as I would say the Flatbush Bid, they have their annual dinner party there. We have a mental health Caribbean and mental health organization that comes in and do public speaking in our restaurant. So there are a number of different events that we are actually involved for the community there as well.
And have you made any active have you reached out to any of like just like the local agencies to try to work on stuff?
Yes, I reached out to the Nightlife Association, the New York Nightlife Association, also the Community Affairs Office. I had a meeting with them, I had a meeting with Officer Flash, commanding officer of the 70th Precinct. And I spoke to them, I let them know I would love to have a meeting with the community, whomever is complaining about the noise, to see what I can do. Because I believe that we can exist together as a business and residents as well.
Questions?
Go
ahead.
Yeah, no, we're gonna go to the public comment period. We have a couple of pre-registered
Yeah, sure.
speakers, and then board members would follow. So is that it, Mr. Lewis, that you have? All right, cool. So we have two pre-registered speakers. First, we will have Chelsea, apologies if I pronounced it wrong, Eben, followed by Jackie Demo. So yeah, feel free to introduce yourself to the crowd and
Hi, everyone. I live directly behind Beach at 25 East 21st Street.
I've been
there for 15 years in that apartment and in the neighborhood home. And when Pitch first opened and the big party started in the backyard, we tried calling the restaurant a number of times and asked if they could bring down the noise, and each night we were hung up on. And so then we began filing for them on complaints. We want them to be a successful business in the neighborhood. I think it's awesome that they're popular and that they're doing well. But often the music starts at 11 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, and it goes until 2 or 3 in the morning, and it is so loud that glasses rattle out of the cabinets in our kitchen. We cannot have a conversation in our apartment. And we try calling them, they hang up. It's called the Department of Environmental Protection, the State Liquor Association. Not because we want them to lose their license or be opposed, but because there are kids in our building. We have jobs that are impacted. I said goodbye to my dying mother this morning, and I'm here, which is the last place on earth I want to be right now. Except I also can't be in my apartment most of the time because it is so loud. So I take on pet sitting jobs. I do anything to not be in my apartment from May Day to Labor Day. And that's not being a good neighbor, right? Hanging up when we call, refusing to do anything. That's not being a good neighbor. One of the neighbors, we want them to be successful. We want to not lose minds trying to live up our
do want to give you my condolences and thank you for showing up, and I'll pass it over to Jackie.
I'm Jackie. Been living in the neighborhood for about 30 years and about 15, 16 years in a place right behind. And I don't really want to be here. Like I want every business to succeed. I especially want Caribbean businesses to succeed in the neighborhood. Some of my neighbors have said, we don't think they're going to take our complaint seriously, and we think you should speak on behalf of us. So I don't actually want to be here. I don't like doing this kind of stuff, but
So yeah, so this summer, can't be in the house, can't work during the house during the day. It's about, I keep the noise complaints, of course my app isn't working, but it's at about 90 to 110 decibels. So you can't have a conversation. If you've ever thought that you can watch a movie when you get home after working for 12 hours, you can't do that in our apartment. And this all changed 4 years ago, right? Like I can't work, I can't take work calls from home, I can't watch a movie, I can't have a phone conversation, I can't have a conversation with someone sitting right here in my apartment. I wear earplugs pretty much nonstop. And so I've had to start, and I don't have any money and I can't move. Like, believe me, if I could move, I would have moved 4 years ago. And so, and I don't have any family in this country. Like, I am literally in the worst position. It's affecting my mental health. It's affecting my hearing. I'm actually having hearing loss sort of as a result of it. And it's just affecting, like, there was a day that I was so upset. I really wanted to throw myself out the window into the pile of people because I couldn't get any sounds. The libraries were all closed. I couldn't go to a business to get just a minute of quiet. I'm just losing my mind. And if someone can find me another apartment, you know, in the neighborhood that doesn't have that as a backyard, I'm happy to do it. But the question is also, there's kids in our, I teach. The day before the first day of school, the music went up until, and we're not talking about Joubert or Caribbean Day Parade. That should be loud and that should be awesome, right? Like, of course. I'm talking about the first week of school. It was until 2 a.m, 3 a.m. every day. And there's children that have a right to have an education in this country, right? Like, and they can't because, and if this was in any other neighborhood, like if this was on Park Slope, do you think this would happen? You know what I mean? Like, why does the education of young children that live in Flatbush matter, right? Like, why do they have to be up until 2 or 3 in the morning listening to pussy, 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 pussy? You know what I mean? Like, that's literally the #1 song, you know, like, and it's like, I just think that we should all have a right to be able to sleep and work if we work from home, you know, and like, of course, parties every once in a while, but it's like, it's not a restaurant, it's a nightclub, right? And so I guess that's the question is like, when you have DJs from 10 until 3 or 4 in the morning, like, that's not a restaurant. Like, DJs that are so loud that you can't, we're on the 3rd, 4th floors, like, I don't even, you know, like, I just don't know what the answer is. So happy to like work out whatever. Happy if anyone has any leads for apartments that I can move to, but like, I can't keep living like this, right? You know what I mean? Like, so the question is sort of like, how can we have a conversation about it?
Thank you, Jackie. Next we will have Lauren Collins.
Hi, Lauren Collins. I'm Executive Director of the Church Flatbush Community Alliance, which is a business improvement district.
And, oh, sorry, I mean, just, I know, for the recording, I just want to make sure that everyone's heard. Yeah.
Lauren Collins, Church Flatbush Community Alliance, a business improvement district, pitches in the district. And just looking at it from our point of view, which is we're a nonprofit, we have done, as you mentioned, we do community meetings at Pitch. We've had our annual meeting, which is a way for lots of people to gather and local people in the neighborhood come by, businesses come by. Yeah, and we're hopefully planning something new for people who live a little further in the district. I hope everyone can work together to come up with a solution because we do need more businesses and especially community-minded businesses is hard. Like as someone who's worked only for 15 years, but we work with a lot of businesses and not all of them will do stuff with us. So I hope that there's a way that a solution can be reached that's good for everyone. So you guys have peace of mind and the business can succeed. Yeah. So, thank you.
You have any more people that signed? No. Good. All right. So I'll pass it off to board members if they have any questions or comments for the applicant. Yes.
My question to you is, you say you live in the back of the business, right? You ever thought about going down and just having the conversation with him instead of calling all these other agencies before?
The people at the front
No,
door told me.
No, what I'm saying, did you ever go to, I'm sure if he's been in the restaurant many times, you could have went down there and had that conversation. We didn't need to.
Every day for
Have you
3
spoken to
years.
him? No.
I
I
never,
was seeing them in your faces, I'm there in the
No, that's what I'm
restaurant
saying.
all the time.
the guy at first told us there's nothing.
Okay, we're not, doing crosswalk.
Yeah, we're not doing
No,
just,
I'm just saying, have you ever, because
Yeah.
to me, sometimes, you know, the conversation could be held to stop, you know, whatever you feel you're not being heard about.
For 2 years, I went up to the front and people took pictures of me and said they'd post me as a Karen on Facebook if I complained one more time or something like that. And I was like, I just want to have a conversation. I'm not complaining. I just need to know whether I should get a
So
hotel.
that is something that maybe we could,
Yeah.
no matter what happens here tonight, perhaps we could arrange this as a follow-up sit down.
Is this, am I allowed to speak as well, or, you know, again, thank you for coming and, you know, expressing your concerns. Definitely heard all your concerns, but there are certain things that I know that, that are false in a lot of your statements that you've made. And, DP came, they did the sound test, that just definitely,
For my building, for my apartment,
came negative, you know,
I have all the proof. I have the
and
proof.
the judge have thrown out all the cases that they came, that for all the complaints with that,
The judge.
you know, so not the judge, I'm sorry.
There's no, there's
Some
no court case.
that I've gotten, went to court for those and they threw them all out. I've even gotten a ticket during the night when they had the Knicks game.
No
You
one's
know,
gonna hate on the, everyone's gonna be
you know,
glad on the Knicks game, but.
Can we have him respond? to
yeah,
that?
just
I
can we
think-
mitigate the back and forth and then, board members can redirect our questions to the applicant, please.
Right, so yes, all those things, you guys, I feel like you guys also do the excessive calls and utilize the 311 system to weaponize, use it as a weapon against my business. That's the way I'm starting to feel. Because there's been a number of calls where there were no one there, no one in the restaurant, and all of a sudden, Flash or someone shows up and what's going on. Sometimes I'll have some kids playing and, you know, parents bring their kids in my restaurant because they feel safe. All right, it's not a violent restaurant, there's no shootings, none of that. There'll be kids in the backyard, they get a phone call, kids are too noisy. So where's the balance here? This is what I'm trying to look for.
I've never called on kids.
I'm not saying you did,
I
but.
only call over 98 to 90 decibels, and I have it all charted. I have a chart that shows the DP app, and I only call when it's over.
Yeah, there are many things we can do. Again,
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, let's say, for example, you said your apartment, your windows, I can probably arrange to have a sound engineer come in and soundproof your window for you. There are many things we can do rather than go the direction, said, go in the direction that we're going. I am very open to the community. I am a very easy person to speak with, and I understand that we all need to live together in this community.
Next.
It's, board members, any more questions? Yeah,
Yeah, so, you know, I'm hearing two people, or several people, and I'm hearing they're wanting there to be, you know, for you to have a successful business. So I think, you know, you need to hear that part of what they've said, because it's been said several times. And that's, you know, and I value their, you know, desire to see a successful business. I also understand having been in not quite the same, but a noise situation, that it can be very, very distressing and nerve-wracking. And there are laws that say, you know, at what point, you know, how loud it can be and after what time things have to quiet down. So you know, is your staff, are your DJs aware of that, and are they being sensitive to that? And that's something you may have to be really hands-on about monitoring.
Yes, as of recent, we have taken those necessary measurements, and Officer Flash can speak to it every time. At certain times, I call them, let them know, hey, we brought the level down to audible level to the New York City, you know, decibel level where there is sound. It should not be concerned at that time. Yes, and my staff is aware. At certain time, we know at 10 o'clock, bring it down to talking level.
I do want to add that DEP will be doing additional inspections ongoingly, and if you wanted to request at your specific location, I could work with Officer Flash and DEP to get those measurements done officially. Okay? And again, we'll continue to do that no matter the outcome of tonight's hearing.
Martin?
Yeah, I guess sort of in that realm, I'm trying to gather as much objective information here as possible. You know, we have a he said, she said,
Yeah.
and so it's difficult to gauge. The truth undoubtedly lies somewhere in between. What do we have? More on these summonses perhaps, and Have the summonses all been dismissed, or can we get any of that information?
I don't have it.
Sean, you want to say who?
Yeah, it's good.
So, hi, my name's Officer Flash from the 7 Precinct. I'm part of the Quality of Life team. For those of you that know, it's the old neighborhood coordination program, the NCO program that no longer exists. We now moved over to Quality of Life team. We handle quality of life concerns. One of the leading things we address are nightlife establishment issues, concerns, anything to do with those establishments. As far as pitch goes, I've been an NCO/Q team officer for the 7 for the last 3 years. I've had numerous conversations with Godfrey. As far as this business, I can state factually, there are no major public safety concerns, violence concerns stemming from this business. The most common issue that we're receiving, obviously, are the influx and 311 calls. The bar was issued a summons by the NYPD for a loud noise within the last 6 months. It was one summons, it was then dismissed through court. The court had directed that all summonses for commercial establishments be sent through DEP. So right now, we're working with the community board with New York City to get the 311 policy changed, but the system's changed. All 311 calls right now are coming to the NYPD. We cannot enforce sound ordinances for establishments. So me going to the bar and I'm not certified to test the volume. I'm not certified to write summons for the volume. There's nothing legally the NYPD can do to enforce this. We're working with DEP to get sound tests on both ends. But I can say from all my conversations with Godfrey, he's been very forthcoming, very honest, very cooperative with all the requests we've had, as well as the complaints. I've spoken to numerous complainants, either nights of the 311 calls or as well as days after the fact, leading up to this meeting. DEP test, been in touch with people for that. I can understand how that backyard area for that behind building 21 and 25 East 1 can have an allowed volume being heard from the building. So I can see both sides of it, but as far as that, it's more of a DEP sound test issue. I know from my conversation with Godfrey, he's been very willing to cooperate with most of the complainants. If people want, he's been offered to help put a tent or umbrellas, things that help mitigate the sound from his backyard, as well as possibly soundproof some people's windows, some building windows, if they want to work with him on that as well.
Yeah. Chelsea, yeah.
I just want to say, I'm not complaining about the sound from people talking on the back patio. I certainly am not complaining about kids playing. I don't care if people stay out on the patio till 3 a.m. It's when there's music.
It's amplified music.
I have videos shot at like 2:30 in the morning outside my window of a full band set up in the backyard. They erected a stage. And
Labor Day weekend?
no,
We would never complain about Javert, we would never complain about Labor Day weekend, we would never complain about Enrique's Day. No way. We're New Yorkers, we're not monsters.
There is evidence, and I'm not misrepresenting the facts. I'm not saying that something happened when it didn't. There's videos shot from outside our window showing that there are DJs, that there's a band set up. When the band was set up, I was like, didn't we even understand? I don't think the liquor license allows by a performance in the back of our department. So I don't, if you want to sound like I would love it.
Or not.
Yes.
I kind of want to echo, this is not really a question, this is just to put it on record. I want to echo what Barton stated and go off of what Officer Flaps's name. I think there's two truths happening here at the same time. And the objective, a lot of it is subjective because that's who we are as human. The objective piece that's missing here is the DEP testing. And I think without that, what anyone says on either side actually is not, we cannot prove it in this space. So I think hashing that out right now is actually not effective in this moment. So I just want to name that there because I think we're going back and forth about the same two pieces. And again, kind of what was already named, there is no evidence that is objective at this moment that we can use to like round on both sides. So without the DEP sound test, it neither side can like say for sure what it is, but what we do know is what is on writing is that Officer Flash has named that he has met with Godfrey. That seems to be accurate, that Godfrey has been responsive, those things, and we do know that you have also, what you're saying is facts, that the complaints have been filed for noise, but in regards to the decibel or how loud it was and those things, we have no way of knowing that, and no one around this table, no one in this room can name if it has broken any
But
rules.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Certainly there has been a test that.
Wait for the
that-
board.
So I was going to.
And that's on the record.
Yeah, I just, for the record, Sean, can you just give everyone here and also for the recording, just like, what does the actual liquor license does for the business? What does it allow? And like, whether like the presence of a liquor license or lack thereof, like how does that impact noise and the business?
I mean, currently, the liquor license permits outdoor amplified sound music. And it's permitted until 3 AM and all days of the week. And so we're not able to get an SLA violation because they have full the permit is for all of that. So, I mean, can I mention stipulation?
Yeah.
So there are instances when a business will agree to a stipulation by which they would agree on their license to turn the music down at a certain hour on a weeknight and a certain other hour on a weekend. And then that gets entered on to the license. Or if the renewal were amended to have different hours. And then there's also the MEND mediation program, which I think was offered to you as well. So those are just two ways to maybe make a compromise, but the owner would have to be willing to do that. It's voluntary.
But that's something I'll have to seek professional advice by my lawyer first. Because I'm not saying, when you say amplified music, you mean music coming from a stereo, right? Whether it's high or low. The speaker, it will not be high or low. Music coming from the speaker at a certain level.
And live music.
And live
It's
music.
on your permit as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's important for the fabric of my restaurant, my business. I have patron in there and they enjoy the music that they love. It will stay there and spend more. So that have a direct correlation to my business and my business making a profit, So I'm not talking about the high level. I'm talking about a reasonable under the decibel level playing music. So, stopping music altogether from my business, I don't have to speak for professional advice from my lawyer regarding that.
I take last two comments from board members and then in the sake of time, I do wanna, so just joking, yeah.
I'm just curious, in relation to what I know is that if there's a complaint, does DEP come running at?
No, it's
not gonna happen.
Officer Flash is easy to get DEP to respond as well as at a location.
No, it's not happening.
Morning on a weekend.
I mean,
Generally, it's not happening.
12 o'clock on a Tuesday, it's hard to get in touch.
we can let it soak in for a moment that the city has made it very difficult to take away enforcement powers from NYPD and give it to another agency has made, being responsive to community members nigh on impossible. But we will continue to. I think that Officer Flash has been pretty convincing with TIP and he will continue to do it.
A board member,
Anyone to come to our house.
Yeah, no, we'll work with you.
You
I
know,
promise
like,
we
you can
will.
come anytime, like, I'm not a person I listen to loud music, I like loud music, I like, it's not, this is not like normal situation. It's like-
board member Prasad and then board member Valentin, did you have? Okay, so board member Prasad and then.
Okay, so in my ideal world, I would love for like DEP to agree to come out spot check 6 times over the next year. Randomly, not announced, just come out and do a check.
That's how they do that. They don't.
Okay, I'm just saying, in my ideal world, I'm just wondering how far what I would love to see happen is from what can actually. And that we, I assume, have to approve this renewal today. That's the very.
Yeah, are we up against that? That was the clock.
Because then it
Yeah,
goes,
we're close.
then it goes to the SLA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go.
But we can put steps on it. So for example, we could say something to the effect that, how long is the renewal good for?
2 years.
2 years. Can we ask that it be shorter?
No.
Okay.
What else you got?
I'm working on this. Give me a second here.
Why are we
So-
pulling for stipulations? Sorry.
Oh, because
Try to get to your mind.
basically, there's a gun to our head right now. We have to make a decision. We can either approve, deny, approve the stipulations. We can't have the information.
No.
No, set, you also, the board can decide not to, give a recommendation as well.
Oh,
Well, here's the other thing, because it is SLA and it's a renewal, it's not as strict as like, our land use things that are, it's one thing or another and you have to like bullet point your conditions. It can be more of a narrative to SLA that the board doesn't necessarily have to have a conclusive recommendation, but these were the concerns. The owner of the establishment has agreed to sit down with people who are expressing the concerns, has offered to assist with soundproofing in the apartments, will consider with legal counsel hours for the music, and we can just sort of memorialize and document everything that's been said here. It doesn't mean that you have a commitment and a hard, fast rule that's either going to be broken or not broken, but it is a start, and then we have a starting point for the 2-year renewal. Assuming everybody it improves and your life improves and we come back more amicably in 2 years.
and of course, the SLA can ignore anything we say too.
This is an advisory body,
Yeah.
but SLA has been conversant on the pitch complaints. We've been in touch with them as well.
Huh.
Philip Arnold is our liaison there. And you've spoken with SLA, Officer Flash, or no?
I have. Not in big detail, I've just asked them, basically confirm that they've received complaints, whatever, they're missing contact information for complainants, I've been assisting them with connecting the complainants to the SLA.
And we've given some of the members of your community, I think we've given you the SLA complaint portal so that you can document in there as well, so they have it directly.
Okay. My concluding statement.
I don't interrupt yet.
Okay, well then, that's okay, I think that information is, it really seems that the problem with this establishment is hyper-focused on this one issue. Doesn't sound like they have violence, doesn't sound like they've been, caught selling bad whiskey or something. And I would just like to find some way for us to tailor our response, which I assume we're about to decide on, to that very specific issue, because, it does sound like you're minded, it does sound like he's, willing to work, and if we memorialize that somehow, then I think that might go ways towards helping. I'm done.
Board member,
I just want to say, at least with him, he's willing to work with the community, even with the tenants. I think it probably wouldn't have gotten to this point had they had the conversation.
There have been several attempts. I know what you mean, but I promise you.
Yeah, can we not?
First door, we were turned away.
Can we not? Because again, it's getting very
That's
subjective.
a lot.
Yeah.
That's an accusation, that's a false
Yeah.
accusation.
yeah, and
Okay,
I mean,
that's good to know.
Mr. Lewis, you said that this is the first time you meeting them, so I think this is the opportunity now that you can get their information and set up something. In addition to members of the building as well, right?
Absolutely. And I would like to have some clear understanding of what you guys recommend so I can consider it,
Lauren,
not denying and walk as well.
So Lauren and I will work with you and you and your neighbors, and we'll set something up expeditiously, again, regardless of what comes out of this, okay?
And also, I would also love to hear from the other neighbors and other people in the community. I felt like I didn't have a chance to actually reach out to them and have them come speak their mind in
I think
regards
Officer
to.
Flash has been in touch with a number of them too, so we'll try to make it as inclusive as possible.
Okay.
And we should move on because our guests are.
Okay.
As we're moving to a vote, echoing what Barton said, can we memorialize the conversation I have here? But I don't think we need stipulations. I think we need to move to a consensus vote as long as we memorialize what happened here.
I mean, that's what we have the motion for.
So no, I'm just putting that out there before.
Yeah.
Make it as, put it out there as a motion.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the SLA license for pitch without stipulations.
I second it.
Oh, I was gonna add one last part. As long as we memorialize the conversation that happened tonight.
So,
Second.
The motion that was put forth was to approve the liquor, wine, beer, cider license requested from the New York State Liquor Authority at 774 Flatbush Avenue from the applicant Team Soca Bar and Lounge LLC, doing business as Pitch Restaurant and Lounge, And in our that was properly seconded, and in our communications to the state liquor authority, we would memorialize this conversation where we've had the conversation and discourse and the reports and everything, that they'd also have this extra information. And that was an emotion. So do we have any questions or concerns, deliberations on that motion?
We really have to name one too. I do, I have a question.
Yes.
So why wouldn't we include stipulations?
Because the stipulations would be things that were enforceable.
Yeah.
And would go on the license. So if we follow up with a conversation and that's on the license for 2 years, but the conversation happens in 2 weeks, it's not really practical. So it would be, we'd list everything that was committed to and then the nature of the conversation. And it does. On the table to approve it, we wouldn't have to, we don't even have to approve it, consider it all.
Yeah, all right, so we have a motion that was properly seconded. Are there any members ineligible? Are there any members abstaining? Are there any members against? Are there any members in favor by show of hands?
What's your vote? Well, it's 5-6, so you know.
What?
The motion carries.
Yeah, all right, the motion carries. So with that, the board is gonna send a recommendation to the state liquor authority with a recommendation to approve their liquor license, but also memorializing the conversation and the complaints that we had in today's meeting.
And the commitments made.
And the commitments made in this meeting. Hoping that the board is able to facilitate a conversation with the bid and residents of the building to come to a resolve. And on that note, it is 7:19 PM and this public hearing is over.
Thank you.
I mean, pretty quickly into the next conversation because we have guests who've been waiting patiently.
All right.
Yes.
I agree. I lived over a restaurant once. I lived over.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess it counts.
Trying to hide out in the back.
Our meeting. Sidebar and come to us.
I'm doing great. Good to see you. It's a call. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, see that.
Yeah, we're starting right away.
What you want to get out? I know, so we went up to each other. So I'm going to the additional meeting.
I know. It's sort of.
No, but no, because it never translates, never see it.
That's worth bringing up. I don't know. Yeah, we're not getting into.
Not a formal presentation, but a conversation, because you're guys are about to go to Arizona, right in the front of South. I chair the land use committee for what it is.
Yeah, I just my third or fourth one, I had it on.
Would you guys like to come to the front? Are you guys okay? Sorry. All right, so now we're gonna go into the last session of our public hearing and committee of the whole hearing. I just wanna provide some background before we jump in and introduce our illustrious guests. So again, you guys might have heard this bill already, but on May 20th, 2026, the city of New York announced that it would advance the neighborhood plans of North Bronx, White Plains Road, as well as South of Prospect Park Plan that would focus on Coney Island Avenue and McDonald Avenue with the goal to, quoting Mayor Mamdani, to build more homes, create more permanently affordable housing, support small businesses, and invest in public spaces and infrastructure that communities deserve. And we're going to do it with New Yorkers leading the process every step of the way. The Department of City Planning, and we've sent this out through our communications, and there's a website, released a service to gather initial community priorities from residents in the impacted areas. However, we have also learned that formal engagement will not start until the fall. So while I believe the city prematurely announced this initiative before being fully prepared to meaningfully engage the community, we also view this as an opportunity for Community Board 14 to take a proactive approach. So this will be the first of many conversations in hopes of preparing our board and our community members to actively engage in this neighborhood planning process. So today we are joined by Ms. Sharon Wedderburn from Community Board 8, who's the chair of Housing and the Land Use Committee, and who is heavily involved in the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan. And we are also joined by LaShawn Allen Muhammad, Executive Director of Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corporation, who is heavily engaged in the East New York plan. So I want to thank you both, and may I also get your names?
Yeah, David Muhammad.
David Muhammad and Khalil Muhammad for joining us today. To get things started, do you want to add anything, or I'll just jump right into the?
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us today, and to get things started, I want to ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you ended up getting involved in a neighborhood planning process, and how did you and your community get started?
Me first or Sharon?
Why didn't you go first?
Yes.
Because housing is tied to economic development.
Yes.
Right, so, and our plan started as something called M-Crown, which was to be able to create housing and jobs for people who could have a livable wage without a college diploma. And it morphed into something else.
Yes. So we are actually, Central Brooklyn Economic Development Corp. Is a local nonprofit that was heavily involved with the Brownsville plan, not East New York. So that's Community District 16.
Okay.
And it started in 2017, I want to say. And so I was involved as an organization from the very beginning of the planning process with the city, where that process that I guess you described, that's going to start in the fall, is spend a year hosting different events with the community to learn, get feedback about what the community wanted to see built. So there were about 4 or 5 vacant lots that were going to be turned into mixed-use buildings, affordable housing. Pretty robust plan that is still, I would say, in the making. What we found, there were 2 things. One, there weren't any really local developers. But one of the great things about the Brownsville plan was that the way the RFP was written, a local nonprofit had to be included in every single proposal. So I don't know if that's going to be the plan here, but that actually worked well. What I will also say is the local hiring plan left much to be desired. And what we've learned over the years is the importance of building in a community benefit agreement from the very beginning. We actually are working with Community Board 16 to actually go back to the drawing board because there was no CBA in place. That was a critical mistake. We are also now involved with East New York, the Broadway Junction Initiative. So that community benefit agreement was in place because it was facilitated by Councilmember Sandy Nurse. So it's also going to be very important to have your local, who's your city council person?
A couple.
We have a few. 4 council members. That's right.
5.
My bad. I was off by 1.
Okay, so we have 3, but I know it's terrible. But so the 5. it's going to be really important that they come together and be on one accord to make sure that there is a community-led, community benefit agreement put in place that includes and incorporates an anti-displacement fund. That is critical. What's also critical is having a solid local hiring plan. So that's Brother David and Brother Khalil also represent the empowered workers.
Empowered construction.
Empowered construction
Employees
workers.
and workers.
So, you know, since the Brownsville plan was enacted, I think what is it called? The local hiring, the city has a local hiring plan now around local hiring, but it really still doesn't include the local organization. So we have a local labor organization. And so all of the things that we have been discovering along the way, I wanted to, you know, we've been sharing with the district managers, you know, shared initially with Sean, that this is all of these parameters or these, what we've discovered should be incorporated in your plan. And so, you know, solid local hiring. Do you have a local EDC here in District 14?
Well, Flatbush Development.
Yeah.
Corp.
FDC
Oh, yes.
Development.
Okay. So Flatbush Development Corp should be very closely involved with the development of this CBA with your city council members. And we're happy to speak to them as well. It was, I'm not sure what their workforce development initiatives are and how it's driven here. Also, what else am I missing? Ownership opportunities. So are there vacant lots that are being turned into affordable housing here? Is that?
Not specifically.
Okay,
Yeah, it's sort of a wider look at the corridor.
okay,
The corridor as it exists right now is sort of a mix of a lot of different uses. And so,
Lots of salt sites.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
depending on, it depends in the eye of the beholder, but certainly, I think the initiative is to build more densely, to build affordably. And so, but it sounded like you had targeted, parcels that were
Yes.
part of your, okay,
yeah, there were 4 or 5 targeted parcels.
okay.
And, you know, that have been vacant for over 40 years, just literally creating blight in the community.
Okay.
And so those were the sites that were developed or being, literally, we're still in the process. So that's one thing. So the corridors is also very interesting too. I think there's probably, how many of the businesses on your corridors are, how many are owned locally by people who live here?
I would say a fair, pretty high number.
Okay, that's good. So that was very different in our
Okay,
district.
okay.
Okay. So I think there's some similarities, but also some stark differences. But the main thing is whatever the community, wherever the gaps are and that you're looking to fill, ensure that you do it through a CPA and have a solid local hiring plan, because I'm sure there's probably pockets in the district where there's some disparity, right? Some, you know, equity issues that should be addressed during this plan. So I'll stop there. I feel like I'm talked.
I add something to it.
That's good.
I think you mentioned, was it the Flatbush Economic Development? Flatbush Development Corp.
Yes.
And I think that just to make sure that development and construction and development is, you know, in an industry where having, you know, subject matter, you know, experts is very, very important. That represents the communities. If not, developers and all those guys will come in, they'll come in and leave out with the bag, and the community, if there's unemployed, I think, something that she mentioned, where you have community members who need jobs or, you know, contract opportunities. If there's no one at the table that represents the community, you'll find that they'll, you know, the community will gain very little, because they're, you know, really, these developers and contracts really astute. So there should be, you know, somebody on, you know, of course, the community side, you know, who's, you know, a professional or expert in the industry. And of course, yeah, we're here. So I'm not self-promoting, but we're definitely, of course, we have very, a very, a long history and experience, in the industry. And, of course, we're looking out for the community. Mhm.
I'm sorry I stepped outside, so I didn't get all the introductions, but, first of all, I don't think we mentioned the name, but Councilmember Rita Joseph, we have 5 overlapping, but Councilmember Rita Joseph has probably the lion's share of the land space that we're looking at. And the question I wanted to ask, and this might show that wasn't here for introductions, but were there any nonprofit developers involved in your plan?
Yes. The, I want to say, in addition to the mandated community partners, there were also, each project had a nonprofit development partner. Not necessarily local though, which was different.
Okay.
I think actually both should have been mandated, that it'd be a local nonprofit development partner and a local community partner.
And were there any community land trust considerations in your plan?
None existed at the time.
Because they're hot right now.
They're hot right now.
Yeah.
It predated the Brownsville Community Land Trust.
Oh, wow.
So if there's so absolutely, it should be.
Brownsville CLT is getting a site though, right? Separate from this, but I think they're,
East New York.
I know East New York is.
They just got their site,
Yeah.
Liberation Center.
Yes.
But the Brownsville CLT, the organization that's sponsoring them
Yeah.
are a nonprofit development partner in one of the parcels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask why they weren't all local? How did they, was it the RFP process?
The nonprofit development partner, the developer chose the nonprofit development partner.
Were these city-owned parcels or were they privately held?
City-owned and overseen by HPD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're talking about the negotiations that were going on, the people that you had at the table, it was quite a few folks that were sitting there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right, and then what does that look like? What is
Well,
that?
when you say negotiation, what do you mean?
Well, I guess you're talking about community benefits agreement and trying to, I guess, drill down on, the particulars of what these developments are going to look like.
So that was interesting. So the year-long planning or the information gathering was not around community benefits. It was just, what would you like built here? What would you like to see? The theme, not necessarily inclusion.
Right.
In that way. And so what we're saying is a formal community benefit agreement that locks in your local hiring plan, your local, even the AMI connected to, what's being built. Anti-displacement funds, like none of those issues were brought up or even negotiated at the community board level, which is extremely important.
Yeah.
So the question that I have is, so the community benefits agreement would be with the city? That's what I'm trying to understand,
Yeah.
because I think
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
this community benefits agreement, that would be something that the city would have to sign and agree to. Is that like,
The city council member, so in East New York, the city council
Yeah.
member initiated it,
yeah,
but it was Central Brooklyn, our organization, Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, and the developer.
so it's with the
really
developer, okay,
Yes, sir.
that's what I was trying to, okay.
Yes, and so, but I'm sorry, you did have a question, I'm not gonna forget.
Oh, no, I'm waiting for Jarrell.
No, yeah, I'm done.
I'm trying to understand what's similar and what's different between what your situation was and what ours will be. As I understand it, you had large plots, city-owned. And so you already have a sort of a framework. I think we're more in the situation, again, you all know better, correct me if I'm wrong. We're sort of hypothetical. We're trying to gauge what the effect will be on predominantly privately owned land along these corridors.
Yeah.
So the city is not involved.
Oh,
Right
interesting.
up the front. It's
Mm.
much more us as a board trying to anticipate what this would do to the fabric of our neighborhood. And so we're not already in a negotiation stage. We're in a stage trying to maximize the benefits for the neighborhood of an uncertain future.
But you have to understand fundamentally, because you have city land, right? The development costs are gonna be less because city land is cheaper. Once this zoning has been announced, you're going to have the speculative effect, right? So in order to be able to provide housing, one of the things that you really have to look at is at the AMI, because in our community, we have rapidly escalating incomes, right? Because of the new development, and we actually begin where the Barclays Center is, right? And the rezoning went to Nostrand Avenue, which is a stop on the Long Island Railroad. And even so there's gonna be high speculative. Because we're adjacent to what was the Atlantic Yards project, which is renamed Pacific Park. When you had the Atlantic Yards project proposed in 2003, so we're more than 20 years out, there was a component of affordable ownership that has yet to appear, right? And the finding of blight within Atlantic Yards was because the LIRR was not taking care of their business, right? So the indications, and I use a personal marker for me, I remember looking for apartments basically adjacent to the Atlantic Yards site. And in what it was an industrial building, it had been the Spalding. Anybody that grew up in New York knows what a Spalding is, right? The Spalding factory. So I was looking at a unit that was first floor and what was essentially basement level. And I couldn't believe that they were asking for $500,000 20 years ago for a unit that they went to Weissman Furniture Outlet and asked, what is the cheapest thing you can possibly buy to meet code? Because they anticipated that everybody would make changes. And there was then as now a huge rat problem. So I remember calling my mother and saying, am I gonna pay all of this money to watch rats trot across my bedroom window, right? But as you know, the development changed and there were buyouts. But we had to take some of those lessons as well too, because the problem is that when you have ownership, right, there is no opportunity for ownership. The prices rapidly escalate. If you look at the changes at the AMI, right, the AMI numbers, the income numbers have scaled upwards. So if I always use the example of the average city employee that makes $60,000 a year, you're considered poor, right? And this is for somebody that goes to work every single day. So when you look at the incomes for 130% AMI, right? And what the corresponding rents are going to be, they're essentially paying market rate. So if you can afford to pay market rate, you have more choices. And you look at the applications for people that are looking for housing that meets their family needs, that's problematic. And you also see a lot of units coming in the studios for one bedroom. So I don't know how the individuals along corridors, because McDonald's is going to look different from Coney Island. I definitely expect that there's going to be more activity on Coney Island, right? And you'll see developers coming in and start to make offers if they have not already done so, right?
So I know we jumped right into the weeds and
Sorry.
No, good. But I guess given where we are at, right, we've received a notification from the city. I want to hear from both you all, right? Like, what was the starting point? And from there, right, for you, Sharon, was it the district needs statement, the statement of needs, and priorities? And after you determined what the starting point was going to be for both the organizations, community boards, was the community that you were working with, were you guys approaching it from an aspirational perspective, or were you more focused on realistic goals, like what you do accomplish, and did it feel like you were did you come in with a plan and had to negotiate down, right? Like, what was was it like a negotiation process with the city? And Sharon, I'll have.
So I'll start. We were community initiated because we were called the M Crown Project, and the objective of M Crown was to use as buildings along the Atlantic Avenue corridor that were zoned M11, which is light manufacturing, right? And light manufacturing changed over the years. If you're a longtime Brooklyn resident, you'll remember that from Flatbush Avenue, I could say going out to Vanderbilt was like basically the auxiliary to Automobile Row. So you had lots of gas stations, used car lots. You can tell born and raised in Brooklyn. Yeah. Gas stations, used car lots, businesses that supported automotive repair. And it almost became, because Bedford Avenue in Crown Heights was known as Automobile Row. So Flatbush Avenue actually became the auxiliary. You can see some remnants by some of the stores that are there. Like there's a large auto zone where my friend couldn't find salt during the snowstorm. She's like, I know who has extra salt. because, just stocking up on things. But the interesting thing is that there were a number of, property owners who have been long-term property owners and had changed the use of their particular properties during the course of it. So someone's family owned the used car business, right? The businesses merged into anything and different things. It's not so much looking at Atlantic Avenue, it's looking right behind Atlantic Avenue, looking at Pacific. No one in their right mind would want to walk down this street after dark, period, huge, recycling businesses, there were some, dialysis businesses, but largely parking lots, for large buses and what have you, school buses and commercial buses. So there was, when you say there wasn't an active street site, and when you have a area like that, that's abutting an area that had become landmarked, it's like, wait, what's going on here? Because we have needs, because we started seeing displacement in Prospect Heights, And I know in my 10 years living in Prospect Heights, and I'm currently living in Crown Heights, right? I was that first wave. I was the Bucky Yuppie wave, and now, you see people that were there, either because they needed larger units, which is something that's really key when you look at apartments, because a lot of the development that you're seeing is not family oriented, meaning you don't have 2 bedrooms, you don't have 3 bedrooms, right? Mrs. Barron, right, was very good about reminding people of what a family of 3 looks like, because that's like the standard conversation that they have about affordability. A family of 3 is not a mother and a father and a child. It's usually a mother with 2 children, right? And if you have children of opposite sex, then you would like them to have their own bedrooms. And people are bringing studios and 1 bedrooms online, right? And studios and 1 bedrooms portend that there will be transients. And one of the things that I really love about being in Brooklyn is that you can have generations on the same lot, right? So what happens when young people can't find homes, right? Something I just experienced, I just helped my niece move to Maryland, right? And she has a healthy income, and it's just like, I can't find the kind of house I want, definitely not in Brooklyn. And then it becomes, isn't accessible if I move elsewhere, right? So her target area shifted, and, being elsewhere, she's like, what kind of quality of life is my child going to have? So those are all the considerations. But going back to how we started, we were community oriented. We saw that, we had large buildings, some of them are beautiful, like 1000 D, which is an old Studebaker building, right? And there's also another Studebaker garage that was located, I think, I want to say Brandon Atlantic Avenue. And this is significant because after closing this, right, going through the rezoning, the AMUP rezoning, that parcel traded for $34 million, right? So again, look out for the speculation, because land courts are definitely going to portend to who's going to be displaced. And you have a very vibrant immigrant community, the South Asian community on Coney Island Avenue. The eating down there is just wonderful, And so, you also have to look at things like, at this juncture, talk about what you want, because community is not just housing, right? If you have a need for a park, if you need to upgrade a park, if there are other amenities that you will need, because there's a burgeoning population in that part of District 22. So those schools are full. But what are the needs going to be? Coming in, I took a Uber, and I am that kid that went to 152 Putty in Midwood, so I'm sort of like a flatbush kid.
What's a Huddy and?
I went to 152 Putty and Midwood. And I was around for a while, And just seeing that there's a 152 annex on Ocean Avenue, right? And they divided up the building with 152, which used to be 152, and the annex was next door. So there's like 350 something on Ocean Avenue. On Ocean Avenue.
Yeah, it's by the Church of the Redeemer.
So is it?
It was a Catholic school.
Right, I thought it was the old lady, the old Our Lady of Refuge.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
looked
yeah.
like to me.
Father
right?
Carey's.
Cause you have friends that are going to, different schools. So, where do you all meet in the schoolyard, you're playing after school, or you're in some sort of organization and whatnot, right? But that just portends again to different population growth. So, take into account that you may need to have now, they're very big on the early learning centers, now that we're going to have universal pre-2.
2K.
It's okay.
right? And, you know, not political, just a person that's always engaged in everything, but someone greeted me, knows me from the ed space, right? In 2011, ahead of the 2012 election cycle, which had Mayor de Blasio and Bill Thompson as the contenders for that seat, right? One of the things that the ed advisors really advocated for was to have universal pre-K, right? So we couldn't make them do it, but we wanted them to make a commitment to it. So as all of these new initiatives are rolling out, we're waiting. It's like universal pre-K, yay, right? So, you know, the 4-year-olds have some place to be. But if we had not done that work in 2011, it would not have been an easy slide to get to UPK2. So it's not a win, it's something, everything takes a process. And that's what I want you guys to understand too. Everything is process. Now, in terms of, so, you know, we had to stop the work on the M Crown because it's like, we're doing this aim up thing, right? And I just become suspicious because, I mean, we're skeptical, right? But you know, when you bring people out from outside of the community with other interests and other goals, you're going to, you know, run into friction. And also, the aim up area was on the border of 2 community boards. So Community Board 8 and Community Board 3 as you cross Atlantic Avenue. Community Board 3 has a different way of negotiating than Community Board 8 does, right? And it's very interesting to hear what some neighbors came up with as things that the nice to adds. Like there is a Franklin Avenue shuttle and they propose making it like the Highland, right? Meanwhile, there's a nearby park by the looks of it, right? This thing hasn't been renovated since 1963, right? So you also have to look at like, where is the equity, right? But strongly, like if you need parks, if you need services, if you don't have an early learning center, those are the things you ask for at the outset. So what makes it tricky too is also your relationship with the council person. You know, I'm familiar with the work of Rita Joseph. I think she's going to be very supportive of all of this, right? But this is, I think, and I know. And you also have to know that this is year 2 of her last term, right? And then year 3 is going to be the last year for negotiation. Year 4, they may or may not have implementation, but it's going to be succeeded by her successor. So you guys need to think about that shit. So you don't have shifting goals, shifting metrics, right? And then we also have, because it started as M Crown, which was a subcommittee of housing and land use, many meetings, right? I was shocked because I think I'm low key in a lot of things. When I came in, I was like, I'll sit over here, right? And they're like, oh, you like the back end? I'm the person that likes to be in the cut. I don't necessarily want you to know who I am, what my interests are when I go into big meetings. But when I started getting greeted by land use attorneys, I got very hurt. You know, and one was a former city council person, and he actually said, hey, we haven't seen you for a while. I'm like, looking for me? Oh, no. But so just just think about that, to have a consistent group with a consistent vision, you know, try and be whole. Has your person been assigned from DCP yet? That who's gonna
We
champion
don't
it?
know. We've spoken to Josh Vogel probably, as he's been involved in the conversations, and then our regular liaison is Honey, yes.
Okay, because, you know, that also makes because you have to have the relationship with the person that you know that you can ask the question, you're gonna get an honest answer. I'm one of those people that I trust, but I definitely verify, you know, I have more than one source of information. You know, so again, you know, I'm sort of like I said, low key. But, you know, I'm doing this volunteer work for the benefit of my community. So what changed really, when it became AIM-UP is that, you know, the developers had already been circling parcels and they're very savvy, right? And they had been working with us on a number of projects. What we found is what was really important to us was affordability, right? And the affordability that we were able to negotiate, that means like, you know, and the we is the community board, right? Someone who had chaired M-Crown, the chair and the housing and land use chair, and I wasn't always in that role. I've only been in that role for the last 3 years, even though I've been a long-term committee member, right? We were able to negotiate greater affordability. That went out the window in AIM-UP, right? The flexibility that we had, and you could immediately see that between that. And one of my pet peeves is the fresh, which you're going to probably see a lot of that on McDonald Avenue. The fresh applications will make you crazy, right? Because
Can you explain what fresh is for everyone?
So fresh is like you get a height bonus if you include a supermarket, right? So, you know, I think about the beloved ShopRite at McDonald Avenue, it's like, that's gonna go, you know? And it's gonna be smaller, right? Because they'll be able to figure out how they can optimize the housing as opposed to optimizing the supermarket, right? You know, again, kids from Brooklyn, I know go to McDonald Avenue to go pick up my fruits and vegetables. You know, rolling around in the car, even though we do live near transit. And they, you know, they say they're doing this because it's transit oriented. And one of the things you guys actually have to think about is how is the IDX, how did it borough extract?
20 years now.
So, so here's the thing, right? You're still gonna have speculation along that corridor, right? So that's something to be aware of, right? And I would say 20 to 30 years down the road, if you know, if you look at Second Avenue subway development, that's not really, you know, something that's forthcoming. And you also have to think about, and you have, because you have to think about the budget in Albany, the budget in New York City, what the MTA, the governor is willing to allot, right? And even though Kathy Hochul has said this will be her last term as governor, that whisper, we're now hearing she's talking about a third term, right? So you also have, am I telling truth?
I don't know.
I'm telling.
Are we still recording? Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, you also have to think about what motivations are, where the economy is. So someone who earned a lot of money in financial services, right? And you know that some years the bonuses are good and some years the bonuses are like, oh God, I'm glad I budgeted better, you know? So you have to think about, you know, what happens with that. And also if you want to look at well, not an analogous process, but look at the process of office buildings being converted into housing, right? And just knowing that that's not a smooth road and this is not gonna be a smooth road as well too. You will have, I don't know if you have developers that are, you know, these people have been circling the neighborhood for a while and, you know, they're gonna see this as their opportunity. But that's also to be aware of because they will come to the community and ask them what they want. If you guys have a firm, not a firm ask, but you have, yeah, you know, this is nice, but you know, it's like, but this is what, you know, it's like, here's what we really need, is a better approach, definitely, right?
I think we do need a better handle on that, who might be the folks who will be coming in, like, and, you know, same your experience as well, right? We don't want it to necessarily be a surprise, you know, as to who you might be, but you maybe figure this out.
So we're not being recorded, right?
Are we?
We are.
No,
We are being recorded. So here are the things, right? You would look for organizations that what do you call them? Professional services that are known to be in this particular space, because you'll start getting conversations with that. And you'll also have the opportunity to see what lobbyists start coming to the, you know, because that's always a good tell, because you have an idea of what your customer base is, right? And I mean, I have to say, I'm friends with several lobbyists, right? You know, like friends outside, you know, but, you know, always to be aware of their presence, you know? So there's a particular lobbyist, when they come to a meeting, we understand that this is a project that they know that the developers know is going to be objectionable, you know, because they're bringing out a particular gun, right? So that's also, you know, if you're savvy enough, you can also look at what the development budget is too, because if they're bringing out multiples of lobbyists, right, then you know that there's a particular interest. So the real question you guys are really gonna have is what's gonna happen on McDonald Avenue versus what's gonna happen on Coney Island Avenue, because they're individual parcels. I think, you know, you asked a very good question, Rashawn, before about are there local building owners, right? As opposed to local businesses. So that's something to get a hold of. And if they have their own merchant associations, that would also be, you know, because we had a couple of executive directors for merchant associations that we could reach out and talk to about different issues, you know, and even if it's just like, what do you think about this, right? Because they have a feeling of what's going on, because the thing is, you don't want a diminution of services, you don't want a diminution of access, and you definitely don't want an exploding rent mix, you know, because you see too many people go bye-bye. Right? One of the things that happened in Prospect Heights is that people that weren't in rate stabilized units, when they would get their lease renewal, you know, the lease, no, not like, like double it, you know? So then you have the tenants talking about what they're going to do, I know, in one particular case, someone that's near and dear to me, they were just too busy, they didn't have the time to move and they just paid, but if you live accordingly, if you live according to your budget, then to see your rent double, that means you have no disposable income, if you afford to still live there. And you also see the changes of goods and services, which is why I'm concerned about Long Island Avenue. Because what are the commercial rents going to look like? And so also you have to look at the proposed designs, right? Because, you talk about small suites in the commercial and the different kinds of things that they would find suitable for your community. So be mindful of that, right? And as part of the negotiations, maybe develop a local development corporation specifically for the merchants, to keep the merchants in a place where they can exist for more than 10 years,
So on that note, even I don't know, Flatbush Development Corp is concerned if that's something that they would be willing to take on, right? Since they're here already. But one of the things that we did negotiate for East New York was asking the developer to condo the spaces for the business owner so that they can actually purchase as opposed to leasing. So that helps with sustainability. So that would definitely make sure that that is in, that's why I'm going back to the community benefit agreement. And to the point that David made earlier was to make sure that that gets negotiated before the ULER process. That's really important.
And when you're considering commercial businesses, local businesses that you want to keep there, certainly the condo idea, that sounds, very interesting, I think, for folks. What about, just that transition and to get their buy-in as well? I mean, certainly they were probably part of the process as well.
So they were, so for this, for East New York, the buildings haven't been built yet, so this is for future entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's, so we didn't have that issue, but the other question that I had was, has there been a commercial district needs assessment conducted for Coney Island?
I don't know.
That's also.
No, and there's a sort of convergence of like Cortellia Road has a merchants association. Church Avenue leading up to where it intersects with Coney Island Avenue has a bid.
Okay.
Further down, nada. The Midwood Development Corp is. Coney Island has a little bit of the Pakistani American Merchants Association, but they could be. Canva's not really a merchants association, even though it's in their name, but you did raise Canva before, and that's another, Canva has Canva Housing Ventures, so that's the nonprofit housing developer that I think, is local and would be knowledgeable and a good word for it.
So a question to the two of you. It's possible that the rezoning aspect of what we're facing is going to be where we're going to be able to have the greatest effect. Considering what stock we have. So my question is, how large a component was that of your all's experience?
Huge.
Specifically, how block by block, area by area was going to be rezoned, what the district ended up looking like. The last part of that question was to have outside advice from various academics or organizations to advise from that.
So one of the things that we invested in was make sure that not only the committee had information, what does the process look like, but it was available to the community at large. So there was a lot of education. So I would say go that way, be prepared to have many, many meetings, but it's important for understanding. But to get to the direct question that you asked, right, it was taller than we expected. All right. And part of it was the fresh bonus. Some of it were people that didn't understand the complete process of, pushing for X number of units before 10, the opportunity for a developer to ask for higher, for floor area ratio. So
What zone did you end up with?
I'm not quite sure. I think it was an R7A. So that meant that we went up to 14 stories.
We're already
And
there.
No, but listen, the fresh bonuses again will also give you as well too. So, you can see the different development, and we're also abutting Atlantic Yards. So as Atlantic Yards, as Pacific Park continues to evolve, all right? you're sort of seeing a lot of, taller buildings that were ever discussed 20 odd years ago. So it changes for us. You have a sharp step up, and if you look at the downtown Brooklyn area larger, because as I said, I'm like, just told them that downtown Brooklyn began at X location. Y'all have moved the marker, right? And if you go down there, and I'm proud, I actually had breakfast with Judas this morning with someone down.
Think about our new tower, did it?
It's
old school to get.
That's where you always have a conversation where everybody can get to work afterwards, right? But when you look at that, when I got out of the subway, right? And I just looked at this, right? And my dad passed away about 20 years ago, so if his spirit wanted to take his old Buick for a turn, he wouldn't know where he was, what is this, right? And having apartments is wonderful. Density will allow you to have more apartments, but think about what your quality of life is going to look like, right? What we have along the Atlantic Avenue corridor on the northern side, right? You have tall buildings, and the next row you have brownstones, and the brownstones, especially the backyards, are in shadow all the time, right? So nothing grows, and do you really want to hang out in your backyard when people, have, you can't put a canopy over it, So, what happens with that? So you have to look at how the development will affect those that are nearby.
This would also be infrastructure. If you're looking at a bunch of auto repair shops along Coney Island
So-
Avenue, you end up with 14-story residential.
So what's gonna happen too is that there's going to be a whole lot of environmental remediation, right? And that's a whole other process altogether that's gonna be added to the pocket. But some people don't know the history, and some people want to be housed in a particular neighborhood. For me, as a market, someone who lived in Prospect Heights, you see people until it gets cold, right? And then after in the spring, it's like, I'm not seeing that lady with the dog, right? And you go further in, and it's like, oh, you moved down Flatbush Avenue, right? So as more people are moving from like the central Brooklyn core and being pushed out into, as how an ex used to describe some parts of Brooklyn, deep Brooklyn, are they even subways here? Like, what are you, ignorant? But, it's like you look at it and you start to see the migration of people as they look for more affordable housing, right? And then when you have communities that have had no quote unquote high-rise development, they're opposed to it. I want to point you back to a couple of things that happened last year, right? With the ballot initiatives, particularly ballot 4, item 4. So I don't even have to say you guys understand what's going on with that, right? So if you refuse to have the heights or additional heights, there's going to be a new cabinet created by the borough president, by the mayor. And it's like they can override you, right? And one of the things that they've taken away with the ballot initiatives is you no longer have council member deference, right? So I don't know how many people didn't understand that, because the way they phrased it is not so nice.
Yeah, the answer is many.
That's like a community board.
Fight and raging.
Question about that, because I think to 2 point, you talk about this community benefit agreement, and then we also have this new ballot reform. If we make these agreements, what trumps what?
That
As we
will
go
be
through this
in the
process.
making of the pudding. The making of
But
the
it's
pudding.
legally binding.
Yeah, it's legally, I think the
Okay.
community benefits,
Yeah.
I think.
So, if I can ask a question. So I'm interested in context, in your perspective. So spoken a lot about, the neighborhood and the context and what's grown up, and the towers are, very large. What's your experience in terms of, what's envisioned at this point for, the area that you've, basically negotiated at this point? What do you envision for your neighborhood then, in terms of what the new development will bring, and then, how it will affect the surrounding area as well?
What's interesting, so it happened very differently in Brownsville, right? So one, there were already high-rise buildings because we have the largest concentration of public housing in the world there, right? The developments that were targeted were already vacant, so there wasn't a rezoning technically, because we already had high rises. So the fight right now is the Nehemiah home owners. The last lot to be developed is right next to the Nehemiah home. So to the point you made, Sharon, the high rise is gonna create a shadow. And so there's a big fight about that right now. But it was able to go forward. So there's a fight, but it's already been approved. So the larger plan, it seems like the city only invested, this is the other really important part that I almost forgot to mention. A lot of the city subsidies are geared towards housing, not necessarily commercial development. So although every nonprofit, every proposal had to include a local nonprofit, we were responsible for finding the funding to build out our spaces.
Wow.
Which is insane. So that's also something that needs to be.
So no SVS assistance, none of that?
No.
Was the fact that there was a neighborhood plan moving forward leverage in your applications for that financing?
No.
No.
Because the developer and the nonprofit developer, they were the ones who were responsible for the capital stack. We were just part of the tenancy, if you will.
Holy cow.
Terrible. So that's a city policy problem though.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but I'm sharing that because you have a lot to leverage because the plan hasn't happened yet.
So can we pause on that a moment? You said that's a city policy problem. Is there time in this moment that city policy could change and then this plan could sort of leapfrog over that change and utilize
I
it?
would make sure that that's written into the community benefit agreement.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll at least try.
Board members, you have any questions? We'll probably go for another like 15-ish minutes before we now meeting. Yeah. 15-ish minutes.
So I have two, so thank you all for being here, because this is awesome to just hear the knowledge and the stories and stuff. And so I have a two-part question. The first one is about, I can't say the side streets, but the streets that are 2 or 3 past where the major changes happened. What I'm interested in is, what have you seen in terms of what those impacts have looked like onto the major development, right? So for example, you hear we have McDonald Avenue and we have Coney Island Avenue. And so basically from Coney Island Ave, like you have Marlboro, you have Westminster, you got the Cortellia Road train station. And then on the other side, in like 3 or 4 blocks, you have like Ocean Parkway, right? And then McDonald Avenue, I know you got Greenwood Cemetery at that corner, and then you got all those other streets. So I'm just curious in terms of your experiences, like, did you see that whatever major changes happened in those plans, that it took some amount of time before some changes ended up occurring on those other streets, or those other streets were pretty much operating the way they were? And then the second question I have is follow through, right? Just because like you're mentioning, there's people who either get displaced or they move. We have politicians whose term limits change or things like that. So my question is, because this is a multi-year thing with multiple actors who move in and out or are displaced, then what were the steps that you took to keep the follow through going? So that's my 2-part question.
So I'll start with our experience with Atlantic Yards,
Yes.
right? When they were building the Barclays Center. A representative from Forest City Ratman thought that the resistance would diminish after they actually built the Barclays Center. I was like, bah, you don't know why they. So, what happens over time is that you do develop a core group of people that are very engaged, right? If you look at Atlantic Yards, we have a journalist named Norm Oder, and he's so on it. I was surprised to know that he had employment outside of the block. So, you have someone, and he's great as a chronicler, right? He's very good in terms of getting the details right, and he has the trust of people so he can ask questions,
And
right?
he's one of ours.
Norm?
He lives in, he used to live in my building. In the district.
Norm is.
We can.
He's a
bring more.
treasure,
Oh, yeah.
but you
Norman.
do have to have community resistance, excuse me, community engagement, right? To make sure that, people are held accountable to what the goals were, right? And, for us, I think, again, the disappointment is the height, right? And the cost of the units that have come online, and there's no ownership opportunity. So what they're trying to do is invest in ownership opportunity over the most expensive part of that build. So it's building buildings over the train yard, and that's more expensive. So if your costs are more expensive, how can you, pencil out something that's quote unquote affordable?
So in Brownsville, it was, it's interesting, the side streets, so it, again, vacant lots. There was a bigger, and you all should really look up the Brownsville plan to see what it was supposed to be.
Okay.
What we actually did was, start to implement and make changes ourselves.
Okay.
So our corridors were blighted. Again, not much local ownership. So we're actually revitalizing one of our main streets, which is Belmont Avenue. The corridors are mentioned in the plan, but there was no investment. The major investment went into the housing development only, not into any ancillary.
And that's because the community benefit was missing, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And not only,
Absolutely.
because the thing is, I'm young enough to remember people telling me about the days of going down to Pickens Avenue and going down to Belmont Avenue to buy stuff. So when you're taking that shortcut to go to the highway to go to Long Island, you drive down Pickens Avenue and you can see the kinds of businesses, and they weren't the local businesses that meet the needs of the community. So that's, creates an economic stress. One example is that we had a co-working space in 1000 Dean Street, and it was a space for not-for-profits and co-working, and it, hit at the right time when people were starting to work from home or stepping away from careers and wanting to do their own thing, right? And it was specifically excluded from something that could be developed into housing. They didn't want to turn it into housing. What happened is, I'm just giving you guys a preview of the okey doke, right? So HRA wanted to consolidate their offices with services that they had previously provided on Linden Boulevard. So I think that's going to be an extension of what happens in Brownsville. So instead of having lots of small businesses, now we have a city agency because the owner of the building would prefer to have that steady money rather than thinking about the character of the community.
Let me tell you what happened. So that was, it's East New York, right by Broadway Junction, 2440 Fulton Street. So the community board tried to negotiate a CBA and made certain demands. The developer did not want to concede and withdrew their rezoning application. So they didn't build up and just put the city building there, which is still pretty much vacant. It's very interesting. So that's more on the East New York side.
Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course, no, put it up there.
So just, you mentioned there's a small group of folks that remain kind of very active throughout the process and committed to seeing it through. What were some of the strategies you found most effective for getting more engagement from the broader community, right? In terms of whether specific types of events, specific ways that you're able to reach out to the broader community to make sure people are both aware of what was happening and had their voices heard?
I think it's because the community have been organized abutting this zoning area. There was a landmark area, so you have to have a lot of activity around that, right? There also was a commercial strip on Vanderbilt Avenue when Sean and I were talking about becoming, she's like, we're gonna have a SLA, proposal. And I'm like, I never joined that committee. That was like blood sport because we have so many applications coming through, right? But it's like, how do you maintain the viability of that corridor, and you have neighborhood organizations? So identify the neighborhood organizations that are active still, right? And work with them. And to your question about what happens to the side streets, you're going to see development pressure, which means prices are going to move upwards speculatively, right? So that's something to be mindful, because the businesses that were able to withstand all of the changes the best were the businesses where they own the building. So if you see non-displacement of a long-term building, they own it. They're not, facing that rental issue. The other thing is to try and have conversations, like, the community board will, community board committees will have some of the conversations. We have, our board is basically 50 appointed board members, or my committee, 50 appointed board, well, not 50, but appointed members and community residents. So community residents will make you aware of the hot button issues, right? And you can make a phone call or 2 or 3, right? And then the other issue is that the other thing too is that the developers, if they can identify a group, just like, some people will roll their eyes when I walk into a meeting, right? You know, there are other people that will welcome other people coming into the meeting, so you have to watch that as well.
You know what was interesting, I'm sorry, Joel.
No, you, go ahead.
What HPD did with Community Board 16, they actually hosted all of the meetings.
Interesting.
At different schools and community centers, and we were all invited. But then they had a Meet the Developers event at the community board office and pretty much encouraged us to like go be part of everybody's proposal, make sure you get in. It was very.
That's great, because what happens is when you have a meet developer meeting, right? It's usually in the middle of the day. So it's great for someone that's self-employed, works from home or retired. So you get a different slant with that. So that's something I think, LaShawn, I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's a great engagement thing. I think the engagement of the community at large by the agencies came later than the engagement that as I said, we started out as a, community board initiated rezoning, right? So having that committee there and having the interest there and having property owners present as, and developers present and attorneys are present too, or lobbyists, when we had to go to remote at one point, for our meetings, one of the things I thought was really interesting, because I would say to somebody, did you see that so-and-so was in the meeting? And they're like, no, I don't know who, right? You know who that person is. And when you told them, you got the big O, right? So it's also being aware of who's coming into the meetings and who's interested.
Yes.
Number 4.
Yes, one thing is here in Community Board 14, we have very little park space. And that's something that I'm hoping, I think many of us agree, that with this renewed rezoning of both Coney Island Avenue and McDonald Avenue, that we could potentially have improved that. I was recently around your district and I noted the privately owned yet publicly accessible 2 pocket parks between Pacific and Main Streets. One of them is basically a large splash pad area, the former student, I believe that was one of the Studenhofer Bakery areas. I spent a whole afternoon there with my kids.
Oh, good.
Enjoying the splash pad. And then on the other side of it is another one that seemed like it was, so my question to you, because I took pictures of it and sent it to Rita Joseph and said, how can we get this?
Yeah.
So
I assume that might be something that the developer, owner of the adjacent building owned and then did, but.
So remember I said at the outset that it's more than just housing. Those are the kinds of things that you have to ask for, because housing is just not, buildings.
Could I, a couple of things. I took a couple hours the other morning and went to the Center for an Urban Future, had their summit at Citibank earlier this week. And there were some buzzwords that I think might be an opportunity for this particular neighborhood plan. One is they talked a little bit about now home ownership as, to establish, generational wealth and that sort of thing. There, and that hasn't been in the conversation for a long time. They talked about, COPA is the Community Opportunity Purchase Act is making its way, being stewarded by, I think, Sandy Nurse. We said it already, community land trusts are having a moment, and then nonprofit developers. So for those, for those ideas, oh, and one other thing I want to say, because it kind of goes to Rogene's point, we have our district needs statement, and there's so many things in that district needs statement that have been in the statement for the 15 years that I've been working on it, that I think that kind of helps identify some of those parks and things that we should bring into the fore.
Turn that into your plan.
So say that again?
Turn that into your plan.
Yep.
Did you start from the district needs statement or?
No, it started
Okay.
outside, but here's the
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
that with the district needs statement, it gave HPD the opportunity to say, well, this has been in your needs statements for such and such, right? So I would, read it, for such and such a period of time.
Statement.
Yeah.
It may live.
Oh, I've started to rewrite it. I'm already. Here's our upcoming neighborhood plan, blah, 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 blah.
Actually, so it's interesting, about 20 years ago, I literally rewrote Community District 16's district needs statement to apply for the Promised Neighborhood grant. And they had a fit. You don't. I love that. Because it was, I guess, a little unorthodox. I don't know. I couldn't understand why it was.
Yeah, these are just supposed to be quiet documents that live in the.
Oh, that's very fun. So I was however old and I was just like, well, I just took it, you know,
Yeah.
and so absolutely, Sean.
I love that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sean, are you done? Cause I know.
Yeah, my question is just to what extent either plan, like on the city side or the resident side, had a transportation planning component?
So on the Atlantic Avenue mixed use plan, right, did have 3 buckets when they did the engagement because they had a year-long stakeholders committee made of various committees. So one was economic development, the other was housing, and the third one was infrastructure, right? And infrastructure was very interesting to me because, you know, having all of these road plans that may not necessarily jive with what the community needs or wants was very interesting. And there was an advocacy group around all of that. So I don't even have to spell that out more largely, right? And the purpose is to have organization, right? And to understand your community. Brooklyn's also in the midst of a bus redesign, right? And looking at how you're being served by the buses or the proposed changes, you know, the DOT is moving towards a European model where bus stops are 800, or excuse me, are a mile apart. Whereas they find objection as to our bus stops being on average 880 feet apart. You can tell, okay, so the difference is, like you look on Coney Island Avenue, do you know how long those blocks are? Do you understand that if you're using a bus, you probably have less mobility? You do not trot up and down the stairs to take the subway. Do you know that taking out one bus stop means that someone's going to stay home? You know, so those are the kinds of things, especially the Coney Island corridor that you have to look at.
Yeah.
You know, and if the, you know, the things aren't neatly folded, so you always have to be aware of that. You know, housing, we were fairly clear about what we wanted. What we wanted is not necessarily what we got, right? Higher prices for rentals and the non-existence, not so much in the AMA plan, but you know, you have to look at possibly Atlantic Yards, right? Because there's only, you cross the street, it's Atlantic Yards, you cross the street, it's, you know, AMA, right? So it's like there's a street that divides it, but you see it all as one community. And not to have the ownership component means you have greater displacement. I don't know along the Coney Island corridor, because I'm gonna make some presumptions that may be erroneous, right? But if you're a new immigrant to the country, right? The likelihood that you have capital to buy a house within a reasonable period of time. And I define reasonable as 10, not 20, because kids grow up at that point. What's the point of having a house, right? So to see if there can be some accessibility or something, you know, some kind of program that will, because homeownership fundamentally prevents displacement, right? And if you want to maintain some character or ethnicity within your communities, you can't, you know, you can't have the displacement. You know, I think buying a house in my community, you know, the entry point's $1.5 million, right? And for the average family, that's something that's not possible. Even if you're diligent with saving, it's going to take you 20 years to save for that down payment.
Then it won't be $1.5 million anymore.
No, that's the other problem. And then, you know, and think about, you know, this is your opportunity to be creative. Think about doing something like, you know, if you rent for X period of time, you know, this agency will provide you the support that you can confirm your, you know, convert your ownership into, your rental into ownership, your tenancy into ownership. Because that's something that, you know, because each one of these iterations, I feel only makes the city better.
So I do have a question, but I wanted to, for us, the transportation plan was really just centered around making them more accessible and safer because of the lighting. That was what was in the Brownsville plan. But I did have a question around opportunity zone investment. So right now, the governor is in the process of suggesting census tracts for investment. Do you know whether or not your state officials have nominated any census tracts in your district?
I don't, but I will tomorrow.
Okay.
A large swath of this neighborhood is eligible for
It is
nomination.
Okay, so I would double check to make sure that.
In
they're
my community,
eligible.
we have fewer tracks that are eligible because of the escalating rents and sale prices.
Have you seen any investment under Opportunity Zone?
Not yet, but they're putting the funds together now, I guess, and the first go around, people just didn't know what it was. They just really didn't understand it, and so I think 2.0 provides more of a runway so that people can, and now we're better prepared, so. You know, the point is to really create a scenario where your neighborhood is investable, but that you have a plan for the investments and that you are included in it.
Yeah, I think just on that note, the housing legislation that passed Congress and became law last weekend, I think re-ups the incentives for the opportunity zones.
Okay. So what you said it was
It's called the 21st Century Road Housing Act.
Oh, okay.
And it became law on Saturday, and it's federal legislation.
Interesting.
There we go. I have okay. Do I have time for, like a?
Yeah, a couple more minutes, but yeah,
Okay.
1 or 2 more questions.
So, the question I have, it's like, I guess it's like a strategy thought exercise. So for example, when you're talking about the European bus model, right, of expanding that stuff. And so, yeah, like I remember attending the virtual conferences for the Brooklyn bus redesign. So one of the ideas they proposed that I disagreed with was if they're implementing this, then the B103 would no longer go from Canarsie directly to
That's one
downtown.
of the ones they've actually Xed out on the preliminary plan. It will no longer exist.
Yeah, so-
103.
No, I'm serious.
I
So
love,
like,
no, I love the 103.
no, the 103 is great.
Works for me.
My friend and I call it the Pride of Canarsie because you go from there to downtown Brooklyn. So
Actually,
the version that I saw was that basically they would cut it in like 2 buses where it would stop at some point on Church or somewhere around there, but then you'd have to take
Change.
another bus to basically go to downtown. And so the question I have for you is when you said ownership, by ownership, did you mean like agencies or political parties or anything in general, just because?
All of the above.
Okay, got it. I was wondering.
So, I mean, and what happens is, and you might look, they have an organization, I think it's United Passengers, but I'll pass on the right information to Sean, right? That have been very active in that space and they do a lot of analysis. One of the things you have to think about is the overall city policy, right? And what's happening with them, first of all, the subway is not accessible, right? As someone who had hip replacement surgery last year, okay, you know, you go to Atlantic Avenue, you take the elevator on one side and you'll be in a whole different part of the world and you'll find yourself hoisting yourself across Flatbush Avenue, you know, to do those kinds of things. So that's specious, right? But part of the reason why the bus design is happening, aside from the fact they do it every 10 years, but this particular go round, you notice with a lens towards future development. So they'll do something like they'll cut the B15 bus, which goes from Bushwick to JFK, right? It's a 1-seat ride for contract airport employees, right? So they, you know, tend to be, you know, wages versus salary, so it tends to be lower income. And they want to either eliminate or truncate, right? And in its place, they're gonna put an SPS bus, this is the proposal, on Linden Boulevard. Right? So when someone said that to me, it's like, oh, don't worry about, you know, what's going on with the B15, they're gonna put an SPS on Linden Boulevard. I had a very frank, native Brooklynite discussion with that person. No one is gonna stand on Linden Boulevard with stuff. Okay, going to the airport or coming back from the airport. But that portends that you also have to look at infrastructure conversations as pathways to future development, all right? So one of the things that was said, like in the Fort Greene, I'm sorry, just got a little bit into the weeds with it.
No, that's fine. That's a question.
I belong to this other organization called Our Communities Count, and it was centered around how transportation decisions, particularly the alteration of bus lines, right? Were negatively impacting our community. So what you have is, MTA and DOT saying, you guys have such good bus access. Don't you want to share? And the response is, why do you think we live here? You know, because many of those underserved communities, right? People weren't paying attention to the buses, right? And they're like 3 buses that run essentially parallel to one another. One is especially slow, but in having that conversation, that was the bus of choice for people that had mobility scooters and whatnot. So it's gonna take longer to load those buses. But once upon a time, for those of us that lived in Brooklyn, when you went downtown Brooklyn, the bus said going to the Civic Center, right? There are people that still have to be able to access those services that you get from the courts, or if you're going to serve on a jury, or if you want to go to the Department of Finance, right? You know, that you have to be able, or dispute your sanitation ticket, your parking ticket, you know, my favorite things to do. But being able to have access, it's like, there's no way you're gonna charge me $100 for not sweeping my sidewalk when I know I swept my sidewalk last night. You know, I work, I can't do it, you know, like 2 times a day, you know, that kind of, but that's an aside. But just looking at like, you know, who will gain and how it serves your community, especially with infrastructure, is really important.
Yeah, so, I don't wanna,
Perhaps they should focus less on making buses free than serving everybody who needs to be served.
So here's the thing with that, right? Because I mean, the campaign promise sounds good, okay? As a person who rides buses, I have a couple of issues, right? Much like the same kind of issues I have with NYCHA, you gotta collect your fares, right? And if you're on the Flatbush Avenue bus or the Church Avenue bus, you can definitely count the number of people that pay versus the people that don't pay. Right, so that's problematic, but you also have to look at the overall budget, right, and look at how the MTA got started, so I won't do that inside, right? But, you know, again, we have to have our communities properly served, and all members of our community should have the opportunity to be properly served.
All right, we do have to transition, but thank you both for joining us. Can we give our guests?
Yes.
LaShawn or Sharon, do you have any just like parting advice that you'd like to share with us before we? Yeah.
We're happy that, I don't want to speak for you, Sharon, but I think we're happy to continue to have these conversations.
Thank you.
You should benefit from what our lessons.
Yeah.
You know, we should be paying it forward to every community district. So we're here. You know, John.
Yeah.
My name.
Yeah.
No. Nice meeting everybody.
Nice meeting you.
All right, guys, have a good one.
Stick around.
Yeah.
Talk
You
about
go back.
2009 rezoning.
Oh,
But
You know, that's a gift, Sean. You're like, you know what make me feel bad for that?
So,
And you know, Jamal, what you can do is help us, get connected because I don't have contact.
Okay.
But
Okay.
my.
Okay. We'll do.
Welcome back, it's like, you are. I know, when I saw your face, I'm like, I get it, I feel like that. It's like, we hope for you, there also.
I know, we're gonna cooperate. Let me word that differently. CB12 is going to be.
Yeah. Southern, trying to.
But I think that they, subsidies programs for even had somebody like sent it in on our laptop, emailed us the day after, it was like, you know, so.
It's a different.
All right, board members, it is after 8:30, and the last part of our conversation will be about the Flatbush 2009 rezoning. There was a lot of, there was a few comments about, you know, if you remember, I heard that a lot in our last segment. In 2009, I was a lot shorter, and I also broke my arm. I did not know what zoning or rezoning meant, so I'm actually, like, I've been reading through the Flatbush 2000 rezoning plan, but I like, would love to hear,
Fine, I was taller.
yeah. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Christine too, to talk about the plan, yeah.
I love it. My name is Kirsten Unica. I'm.
You gotta
make a shirt with that.
I finally figured out how to, like, so people can help.
Kirsten,
Learn my name.
If you make a shirt like that, I will wear
Yeah,
that.
yeah, okay. I used to say utilize it, that worked.
Utilize it.
Yeah, that was, it's a little, yeah. But, okay, I'm gonna stand over here and,
Take us to
now
class.
it's gonna be about the 2009 zoning. And Joel, thank you. Very good. Back, still over, okay. That's it, yeah. Now everyone.
All right.
That was good. And Joel Siegel, I forgot your name, but Joel. You said. 2009 zoning. In 2009, this portion of Flatbush from Coney Island Ave this way, like from the park down to the railroad cut was the subject of a study and a rezoning. It was done in response to a request from Community Board 14, elected officials and civic groups. The city planning department conducted a zoning study with the community and then proposed basically 3 objectives. One came from the community, and that was to protect residential blocks to preserve neighborhood character. The second came mostly out of city planning, was part of their initiatives in the 2000s, was to start mapping affordable housing requirements in the city. And so the third was also mostly coming out of city planning. It was to increase density on our east-west corridors like Cortelyou, Foster, and Church Avenue, and allow higher denser development in those areas. So those were the 3 parts. And it was called a contextual rezoning. And I'll explain what that means. It was part of a citywide policy in the 2000s where many voters wanted zoning changes in their neighborhoods to protect neighborhoods from out of character development. At the time we had Bloomberg was mayor and our city planning chair, Amanda Burden, were in favor of preserving neighborhood character while also mapping areas of higher density in specific corridors. So not only was this happening in Flatbush, but in the decade of 2000 to 2010, give or take, about 16 contextual zonings were carried out across the city. So it was a big planning trend. And I'll explain, like, what was the zoning before that? Well, the zoning was mapped in 1961, and it was pretty general, and it wasn't that tailored to what was there. It was sort of just thinking that the whole city was going to recycle and rebuild from 1961, you know, a very futuristic growth sort of idea. But here's what happened. The contextual zonings, where did that come from? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So city planning, engaged with the community, I don't know, over about 2 years. I was not involved in this. I'm just kind of rehashing it for you real quick. So you have like a good base for what we're gonna do next, right? So who requested it? Community Board 14, elected officials. It covered this area, which is about 180 blocks. The issues were neighborhood preservation, because some new buildings were coming in, especially up in this area that were much larger and much taller than the existing built environment. This is because of the existing zoning, as I said, mapped in 61. It was not really tailored to what was really here. And between 1961 and 2000, there was more of a valuing of a more carefully tailored zoning that still allowed development, but was a mix of preservation and development. So particularly, they're not on here, but there used to be a lot of R6 and R3 too, which just would have really changed a lot of the built environment. So what happened was there was some demolition of existing detached 1 or 2 family homes up in this area and probably a couple other areas. And that was the catalyst event that prompted the call for contextual rezoning. Now, here's the thing. So in 1961, we had R6, R7, and so on. But in the 90s, in the 1980s, city planning started to create a new set of zoning districts that were more tailored to our built environment and that kind of shaped the envelope of your building more. There used to be something called a height factor. If you had a really big lot, you could build a really tall building in R6. And they started to move away from height factor and towards something where it said, these are your yards, these are your setbacks, this is your height, and it kind of sculpted the building a little more, and that's the basic concept for contextual rezoning. So in the 1990s, in the 80s, they wrote the zoning, and in the 1990s, it was in the text, but they hadn't started, you had to go change the city map to make it apply to areas. The rules on the book, but it has to be on the map to actually affect the built environment.
And would they, you know, on a application by application basis, they would just sort of impose it, or how would that work then?
Well, a couple of things happen. Of course, we have private developers who, I own a piece of land or my client owns a piece of land and I want a certain zoning district to, you know, develop what I want to build. So individuals were mapping contextual zoning when they wanted rezonings. But when the city would do large studies, you know, that's more like master planning where you are not just going what we call piecemeal, lot by lot, here and there, things changing. It's more of a real plan. That's what planners are supposed to do, right? So the 3 goals was to change the zoning map. Oh, did I say, so they created the contextual zoning. Then they started mapping it in the 2000s. And so I'm not talking much about the actual experience of what it was like for the community board to do this work, because that's another story that I wasn't a part of. But we did change the zoning block by block to better match existing built character. And we did create new incentives for affordable housing development in select areas to facilitate the affordable housing program that the city planning had at the time. And then they also they mapped a little more higher density along Cortelyou, Foster, and Church particularly. That's what I'm familiar with. The idea is if you're going to downzone the side streets to preserve low density, they wanted to balance it with upzoning, which is a term for creating higher density development on these east-west streets, which are wide, busy commercial corridors already. So those are the 2 components, or 3. So most people describe it, as I said, as a mix of upzoning and downzoning. And that's the gist of it. Taller, denser buildings could be built along these east-west areas, while the side streets and detached homes and other housing types on side streets would remain preserved. So that in a nutshell is the 2009 Publishers Zone.
I would just add a few things. Chris just did tremendous presentation. You think to do. A couple of key points. Kirsty said there were 16 areas of the city that were done. This rezoning that I was part of, I testified at city planning, was collaborative. City planning sat down with us, was interested in what we had to say, and we reached a consensus. It was the exact opposite of what happened with City of Yes. Okay? It was a collaborative process, and hopefully that will be the case with what's coming up now. Okay? Collaborative, they listened to us, they wanted, I mean, it sounds silly, they wanted everybody to be happy, and they really did, and everybody was happy. And I want you to just look here.
What was your role at the time, Jill? You were a neighborhood association member,
Yeah,
or
I
you
was a-
weren't on the floor?
No, I wasn't on the board. I was, you're probably president of my association.
President, if you did.
Yeah, so there were streets like Stratford, I don't know which one was Stratford, that were R3, that were R6.
Yeah.
And houses were being torn down. on really nice, Victorian blocks. Houses were being torn down that were adjacent to Coney Island Avenue, and there's a couple of buildings that were built that are out of context, and there's still vacant lots from buildings that have been torn down. And so we made a trade-off. We said, okay, and by the way, we were ahead of our time, okay? The things that we're talking about here tonight, building affordable housing, upzoning for more density, this happened in 2009, okay? So that's what we did, and again, collaboratively, unlike City of Yes.
It's a
So
mandatory inclusionary.
well, and Bob, so that was a better expert than I am at zoning. But so we traded off and we preserved the R, and this would, gone to R3X. And R3X preserved 1 and 2 family homes, and we agreed that they upzone Coney Island Avenue. So we did that in 2009. We didn't wait till 2026. We did this in 2009. Well, they came around in City of Yes, and they said, oh, we're gonna allow, and the idea was to preserve the context. Well, now with City of Yes, they said, oh, too bad. We said what we said then in 2009. We changed our mind. Get a new mayor, get a new city planning director. Everything that you do can be thrown out the window, okay? So my experience with city planning is you can't trust them, okay? I'm sorry. They've got lofty goals. They may have good intentions, but I'm telling you, you go from one administration to another, they'll tell you too bad. Well, just one last point. So now there are various corners here throughout Victorian Flatbush that you can knock down a building.
Not just the corners.
Okay, and you can take off one adjacent to a corner and build apartment buildings now. So that's what they did. And by the way, it may not be your concern, but if you live next door to one of these properties and they knock the house down and some developer's making money with a apartment building, the adjacent member, homeowner has just lost a pile of money, okay? So that's what happens, okay? And nobody's compensating you for that. It's not a taking under the US Constitution. They're just taking money away from you and giving it to the developer, okay? So that's what happened with the City of Yes. And, Sean didn't want to talk about specifics, but we're coming around now and they want to upzone some more. I want to downzone so that what they did with City of Yes to our neighborhoods gets reversed. That's my pitch.
I think as part of that 2009 order, shortly after, they created a number of mandatory inclusionary zoning sites, generally around Newkirk. At least one of them is totally fraudulent because they zoned PS 217 as an MIH. Mandatory inclusionary. On 217.
I'll just comment briefly, to my knowledge, that the not much affordable housing was built as a result of mapping those
Right.
parcels.
And-
So I'm sure they'll have another look at that when we do this.
And it's not
together.
very affordable anyway.
Yeah.
So what was
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to throw out there, I did a lot of research for this, dug into a lot of what was happening in 2009 and the maps and all of this. And my understanding of what it looked like was basically that they minimized where, again, larger buildings, but those that were doing multi-unit buildings and actually affordable housing could be built in basically that whole left area. All the yellow that you're seeing, all that, and they really kind of restricted it to this one area, really like the Flatbush Avenue corridor. And they offered incentives for people to build affordable housing there. So really being like, oh, build here, not here, which
There's not,
I got for myself at least a really not good feeling you know, when I was like looking that over, and kind of seeing what they were doing and how that was being put out there, being like, great, like, go a little bit over there. We don't want you here, is the way that I was reading that. But that's just for me personally.
I'm not sure that that's how it worked, but I think what they did is they took the softest sites that were, let's say, something is zone R6 and it's built with a two-family house. In those cases, they overlaid an MIH because they figured someday soon, someone's gonna build something and we'll give them the incentive.
Yeah, it was just that they were only offering affordable housing incentives in select R7A zones. And in part, just making it illegal to build in the other zones. That was all part of what I read. And
What City of Yes did,
the lead to that in 2009.
City of Yes created the qualifying residential sites. You had to be on a wide street and you had to be 5,000 square feet. So in Ditmas Park West, that's not a huge problem because there were only, as it turned out, I think 11 or 12 lots that were 5,000 square feet. Because Ditmas Park West, the housing sites are 40 by 100. In Beverly Square West, the sites are 50 by 100 and most of the streets are wide streets. So almost every lot in Beverly Square West could be a QRS.
I thought it was the narrow end of a block, the short end of a block. not-
No,
It has three components. I'd like to just slightly shift
it could be
the conversation here because, you know, that is a
either
component
or.
of the Flatbush rezoning. And one thing is City of Yes, after that, created a universal affordability option, or I forget what the P stands for, which means that everything with an R6 or an R7 in front of it now can build affordable housing. So there continue to be approaches to increasing affordable housing opportunities. In 2009, it wasn't much. So
And the easterly side of Coney Island Avenue, from the Circle down to Dorchester, is zoned either R7A or R6A.
And the only 100% affordable housing developments were those on city lots. So the Caribbean, the Caribbean market, the on Caton, became Caton Flats, right?
Yes.
And then the other site identified for what would have been 100% affordable housing, because it was also city land, was the PS 90 site at Church in Bedford. And that was prior to discovering the remains of enslaved Africans. So that would have been another, but there's no other city-owned. I mean, when I first started writing the district need statement, I had this line that we were one of the least developable districts in New York City. There just wasn't, everything was already built to 50% of FAR. And then it seems like my question before was, it seems like a lot of the upzoning on the corridors may have sort of been ahead of the market forces, because there wasn't a lot, like the shock and awe and dismay even of the building on Newkirk at Argyle, I think that is, and the idea that that could possibly be as of right, and then realizing that it became as of right in 2009.
Yeah.
And it was built in what, 2020 or 2019? And then the other one where people were just dismayed and flabbergasted that it was as of right was the Coney Island Avenue at like the church and by East
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
East 10th. Those
it took a while.
How could that possibly be as of right?
The one
And
with
it was
the
this
circle is rezoning.
rezoning. Sorry,
The one up on the circle itself was a rezoning to R7D.
that's not our district,
That's, no, it's in 12.
so we don't talk about it.
But yes, it took time for Coney Island to be developed as it is now.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I jumped in on.
Sure, no problem. I'm sorry to hover. I just,
No,
my,
go for it.
my, you know, been sitting a long time, as have we all. Because I'm new to this zoning world, I just have a couple of statements you can confirm that I think would benefit everyone who's just not in this world all the time. For me, I mentioned this one time at a meeting, but the 2009 Flatbush rezoning changed the zones. It changed, it said, you know, well, this is now going to be this. As you said, some things were down zoned, some things were up zoned. How that differs from City of Yes is that City of Yes, which passed this two Decembers ago, is that it changed the definition of what those zones meant in effect. I think that's it. I say that to people that that's important for us who aren't in this world to remember. And then I have it's an earnest question, and I don't mean to put anyone on the spot. Maybe the answer is we just don't know yet. But what is, and this might be, you might laugh, maybe it's super naive. What is going to change? So now that we understand that in 2009, we changed the zoning, and in 2004, 2005, with City of Yes, we changed what the definitions of it means. What is the one sentence layperson's term of what this is going to be?
Meaning what is prospect?
What's the name again?
Yes.
Well.
Or do
one
we just
thing-
not know yet?
Yeah, one
Yes,
thing
we
you
don't.
can see on
I
here,
think that's the purpose of the process.
well, we don't have the prospects, what's it called? South of Prospect, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The South of Prospect corridor.
Wow, we have to
Map here,
rename.
but it's, I'll just point. So basically, it's the study on Coney Island Avenue. What's really interesting is the rezoning did the east side of Coney Island Avenue, and this is also the border of Community Board 14, us. For us, Coney Island Ave, right across the street where the Dunkin' Donuts and the gas station
The
is.
other side is
It's
C8
zoned,
too.
it's zoned mostly C8s. So
Car stuff.
car stuff. What is C8? It's kind of a manufacturing district. There are things you need to know about C8. One, no housing whatsoever is permitted in C8. Second, what is allowed? Gas stations, contractors' yards,
Kennels.
donuts, drive-through restaurants, AutoZone. So that side of the street, I assume, is, well, it's very clear that they're looking at C8s and going, let's make some of this for residential.
Yeah.
So,
To make it more of a cohesive corridor is what they're looking at.
yeah, I was
There was
gonna blurt out, I don't
Whatever
even
that
know if they.
means.
care.
It's just housing.
Yeah, it's the idea is we're looking for more places to build housing.
Yeah, it's our housing.
That there's a housing shortage, so is that?
But can I also,
Yeah.
you inferred this, but my understanding, and DCP has said that the intention is to rezone Coney Island Avenue and rezone McDonald Avenue. The streets connecting them are not on the block. I don't want to say chopping.
Yes.
But not on the block for rezoning. So the neighborhood plan, it doesn't mean that, Josh Vogel was very clear. It doesn't mean that things can't happen on those blocks. We build a park. It just means that what happens on those blocks won't be a product of rezoning those blocks.
Except to the extent that whatever happens on Coney Island will have some.
Yeah.
Backyard
Look
effect.
back
Yeah, think about that.
Let me interject.
So we'll definitely talk about it.
So my suspicion is that the portion of the east side of Coney Island Avenue is now zoned R6A. They will push up to R7A. That's a relatively easy push.
That's an assumption, but that's something that can't happen. That's what they're probably looking at.
Well, it's moving it from an FAR of 3.9 to an FAR of 5.01 for if they put in affordable housing. The big problem is the west side of Coney Island and McDonald, because first of all, they're in District 12. And second of all, they're also in the Ocean Parkway Special District,
Right.
which was created for special interests 30 years ago, 40, I've lost 50 years ago. And so you have, there are two separate lifts there. One is changing the zoning from C8 to R on the Coney Island side, and changing it from
The east side.
M1 to R at McDonald, and also getting rid of the Ocean Parkway Special District, which has its own.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
the concern of this board will be what happens on Coney Island Avenue, both sides of the street. I think there'll be less conversation about Ocean Parkway.
Except that
District and
the-
McDonald.
oil companies that own the underlying properties for the gas stations aren't gonna give up so easily.
Yeah, Saskia had her hand up.
Oh, yeah, I'm behind you. I just had a question, which I was trying to find out some information about it, but maybe you guys know some stuff about it, or if there's conversation about it, this is something we could be asking about. But with the new housing being built, are there gonna be any kind of specific rules in terms of how big the apartments themselves have to be? Because a lot of the new buildings that are being built around us, they're all studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom.
Yeah, I think that's
And very tiny.
Yep.
So if you're a family with 2, 3 kids, or let's say maybe you're just a family with multiple adults in your whatever situation, however you live. Kids or no kids, older elderly parents or whoever, you need separate rooms. There's really no space. So like that building, I know it's outside of our area, but just to give that building, the new fancy building by the park circle. Yeah, the huge building, lots of apartments, everything it ends in 2 bedroom, 2 bath, and the 2 bedroom is tiny. It's literally a closet. You can't live there as a family. Forget about like multiple whatever adults in the family situation. The the building that's on Coney Island across AutoZone, same thing. It's like and I'm wondering if we're building this housing for people in the neighborhood, and this is a very like family-based community, lots of immigrant families, big families, different families living here. How are we gonna, like, affordability is one thing, but then space-wise, the other thing. And then what's happening with the green spaces, like, are we adding, and then the big deal, of course, is parking. I know more people need to be using public transportation. That's a big deal, but lots of schools, teachers commuting.
That's
everything.
all of
Yeah.
that is gonna be in the mix of all of the conversations.
For 6 kids onto a subway?
Answer is-
Yeah,
Right.
all realistic,
I
yeah.
mean,
They
realistically.
tackled the rent problem, but they didn't tackle the size problem.
The size, but the size
Or
of
the
apartments.
There are opportunities will exist to put that in the mix.
Yeah, that has
And I think Sharon,
I mean, I feel
Sharon
that's
sort of
for-
talked about that a bit
Yes.
when she talked about
Yeah.
the,
But I noticed this is a problem
CB14.
across,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
just in general.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I mean, I think it's also part of the reason, like, developers, they doing it because they can get away with that, because it's really hard to get rid of a family, you know, out of your apartment building if you're trying to, or like not give a lease or whatever, you know? Highly likely if you have a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom apartment, that a family's gonna try to take it, and they don't want to have long-term.
that's why I hope there's like a lot, some pressure on this plan to have community-based nonprofit housing developments.
My suggestion is,
Ornella had her hand up and then.
Question on the Coney Island corridor. Our Coney Island is split, correct me if I'm wrong here, it's split CB14, CB12 on one side.
Yep.
What are our thoughts around collaboration on?
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. I mean, I've spoken to Barry Spitzer. We had people listening in our last meeting from CB12. I mean, we're getting started early because it's so fun. But when they begin their meetings, we've had conversations, and I think especially on Coney Island Avenue, there's going to be, I wouldn't say deference, but a collaborative stance from them.
that's what I'm hoping for, because what I fear is that, I think, was it Sharon?
Yeah.
Someone spoke about it, that one community board can negotiate differently than the other. And what we don't want is for that to kind of lend to like some tension on how that quarter ends up looking.
I'm not
because-
super worried.
Yeah.
here's my unsolicited suggestion, and that is,
I don't think you were recognized. I think we're ashamed.
sorry,
And Drill, just to follow up on Sasha's comment, if you haven't filled out the survey yet that Jarrell shared, please do. And please name check that. I think you have a daycare. You have people, if you have people who
You
left.
talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I filled it out, it was
Yeah.
like 2 months, whenever.
Yeah.
DCP was so impressed by how many surveys they've gotten from this district, and they're gonna send me the languages they didn't get many in, and we'll get to that.
Just name check, like if you've had families leave because they can't find apartments big enough.
Mhm.
If you've had families
Yeah.
leave because they, and invite them to include it. It asks you what your affiliation with the neighborhood
Yeah.
is, but there's no requirement. If you live in Maryland now, like Sharon's niece, because you couldn't find an apartment, you can fill it in,
Yeah.
a sizable enough apartment.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, that with apartment size is as important as affordability. And is never even talked about, let alone.
Yeah, we're not discussing it.
Living on the same
The
thing, so
other- yeah.
please encourage people to fill in the survey.
And then also if we're bringing so much more housing here, are we putting more schools here? What's happening with the, like, the local school, what's happening with the, I mean, even like fire department, like, is there gonna be enough calls to manage this? Like, are we discussing these needs of like, are we putting another preschool center around here? Are we like, are we making, we're putting more housing and we're putting more families and like different people? And not that I'm only advocating for families, because I work with families and obviously I have a family, but like, but also like.
Future community.
Yeah, just like, what are we building this? Are we turning this into a Williamsburg, or are we turning this into like, we're improving the community? So Williamsburg has families too, but it's very specific type of family now that can live there.
For the sake of time, I'll just nod with you and say, I'm like.
Yeah.
Sean,
You want to be, head of the table, for the sake.
no, good. Sean,
At these restaurants.
correct me if I'm wrong. We're looking at Coney Island Avenue from the circle down to about Foster Avenue. When all this,
You mean for this upcoming one?
no, what we're looking here on this map, we're looking at the rezoning.
That's show.
Yeah, from the circle to about,
The tracks.
to the tracks, yeah, excuse me, the Long Island Railroad, okay. By the time this thing comes into law, how much of the east side of Coney Island Avenue is still gonna be susceptible for development? I mean, it's being developed at a rapid pace now, you know, there's so much. Look at the building that, I can't imagine what that building is gonna look like on Beverly Road, you know, on that corner. So that whole side of Coney Island is already being developed, so I don't, you know, nobody's gonna knock down one of those new buildings, you know, to build a bigger building. So, they just built the building on Foster Avenue, right on the corner of, Foster and Coney Island Avenue. So, I don't know how much is gonna be left there to even develop, you know.
Well, the west side is, oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Nina?
No.
Or you said, go ahead.
So my suggestion is, do not be passive about this. Treat this as if you were the developer. You come up with a program, the board should come up with a program for all of those blocks,
That's the plan, man.
right? Literally. My background, I started with the city a long time ago. My background at HPD, HDA, the predecessor of HPD, was in urban renewal, where literally the city condemned a big chunk of land and programmed it. We decided where the housing was going, we decided where schools were going, and we were really full of ourselves. We were child megalomaniacs, but that's what you have to be, because you have to program that as if it's yours and tell the developers what they're gonna do. Don't wait for them to come to your door and ask or suggest.
Precisely when we're getting the early start. Nina had.
And then we can have to wrap up.
Oh, so I just want to say a couple of things as far as, you know, our budding CB12 is that they have the same situation, really very similar as to CB14 with the need for family size apartments. You know, there are a lot of large families and a lot of them are seeing family that's now moving out because there's just no place to go and no sizable apartments. I think in Williamsburg, they were very, you know, very politically savvy. And I'm not talking North Williamsburg, I'm talking about the more traditional Williamsburg, in that they basically stipulated that, you know, you cannot build an apartment there that doesn't have at least 3 bedrooms, if not 4, and a couple of bathrooms. Because otherwise there's no place for anyone to live.
It's just 3 bedrooms, let's start with that.
I'm hopeful that we're gonna get everything we want and more.
So, thank you everyone for coming. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, for lunch.
Yep, somebody.
We gotta stop the recording.
Yep, let's stop the recording now. Yep.
That's what it's on again. We gotta stop something. Let's go.
Rel, do you gotta stop the recording?
Let's see.